Hey everyone, tonight we're going to gently unravel a day in medieval Europe, except it's not just any day, it's your day. You've suddenly woken up as a very average peasant in the 14th century. And spoiler alert, you're already in trouble. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it for you right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes. A rooster just screamed directly into your soul. It's not your alarm. It's not cute. It's angry, confused, and standing inside your room because doors are expensive and your room is basically part of the barn. Hay is everywhere. Something warm and uncomfortably alive is nestled near your foot. You really hope it's a cat. You sit up. Your mattress is a sack of straw that's given up on being straw and is now mostly bugs. Your blanket is a piece of wool so coarse it exfoliates you every time you move. And it's freezing, always freezing. There's no insulation, no central heating. You were sweating last night and now you're an icicle with dreams. And you have to pee. Which brings us to the first real problem. There is no toilet. Not in the modern sense. Not even in the hole-in-the-floor sense. There's the go behind the shed method or the use a pot and throw it out the window later method. You pick the first. You step outside into the crisp morning air, which smells like wood smoke, damp earth, and at least 3 kinds of manure. It's not offensive, it's just medieval. You make your way to the bush. It's muddy. Your feet sink with every step. You slip. One sock is now one with the earth. You pretend it's fine. You pretend you're fine. Everyone else is doing the same. Now about that pot you didn't use at night, that's your chamber pot, which if you live in a town, people throw out the window with a shout of Gardez-l'eau French for watch out for the water. A charming phrase that usually means duck or be peed on. Streets often double as sewers. That's why medieval folks wore those wide-brimmed hats, not for sun, but for survival. You head back inside. Breakfast? Not yet. You need to get to work. But let's pause for a second and admire your hygiene routine. You splash your face with cold water from a wooden bucket. That's it. There is no toothpaste. You rub your teeth with a twig or cloth if you're lucky. Most people don't. You don't. You try not to breathe on anyone. Now a brief historical truth to warm your heart. The average medieval person had better teeth than most people think. Not because of dentists, but because sugar was rare and expensive until it wasn't. Thank you, colonialism. But don't celebrate yet. Your gums still bleed. You still have one molar that aches every time you chew. And there's a distinct possibility you'll lose half your teeth before age 30. You throw on your clothes. They haven't been washed in weeks. They're made of wool, coarse linen, and the smell of your entire extended family. Laundry day is rare because soap is rare and water is cold. You wear layers not because it's trendy, but because you'll freeze otherwise. Your undergarments, a long shirt, and whatever dignity you can salvage. And then it hits you, you're hungry. You finally remember breakfast. And no, it's not eggs and toast. It's a hunk of dark rye bread, possibly from last week, and maybe some ale. Yes, ale. Even kids drink it. Water isn't safe unless it's from a spring or boiled. Ale is safer. It's weak, but it's also warm, sour, and served in a wooden cup. And no, you don't get coffee, or tea, or even hot cocoa. Those haven't arrived yet. And if you ask for matcha, someone might accuse you of sorcery. As you chew your cold bread and sip your warm flat ale, a goat walks past and gives you a judging look. You don't respond. The goat is probably more respected than you in this village. Oh, and remember the bucket you use to wash your face. You'll use that same bucket to fetch water later, to clean turnips, and probably for laundry too. Water is carried by hand. You walk to the stream, fill a wooden pail, and walk back again and again. It's good exercise. That's the only gym you get. And no, you can't just move to the city. Cities are overcrowded, stink like boiled leather, and regret and regularly burst into flame. Also, people there are more likely to throw stuff at you, or rob you, or give you the plague. But don't worry, we'll get to that soon. Now, quick detour to something quirky. In some areas, people use moss straw or even old wool as medieval toilet paper. Yes, you now know too much. But honestly, wouldn't you prefer a nice handful of moss rather than nothing? Anyway, you finish your medieval morning routine, feeling slightly damp, probably itchy, and already 10 minutes behind the chickens. And now begins your workday, which we'll get to next time. You're barely done with your medieval breakfast if a lump of stale bread and a sip of warm ale can be called that when it's time to get moving. Because here's the thing in medieval Europe, no one cares about your circadian rhythm. The rooster crows, the cows moo, and your body is no longer yours. You don't have a job, you are the job. You shuffle out the door, ducking under the low wooden beam that has introduced itself to your forehead every morning for as long as you can remember. The door creaks like it's haunted. Maybe it is. The breeze hits your face and brings with it the scent of freshly churned mud dung smoke and something mysterious that may or may not be pickled herring. Your stomach growls, but it's not going to get a second round. Breakfast was what it was, and lunch. That's hours away and depends entirely on how much bread survived the mice. You trudge toward the field. Yes, the field. Because if you're a peasant, your life revolves around a patch of land that isn't even yours. It's Lord Reginald's land. Lord Reginald, who once visited the village in a shiny hat and left with 3 chickens and your cousin. Today you're tasked with weeding, not with gloves, not with tools. Just your hands, your back, and a healthy disrespect for thistles. The sun isn't up yet, but you are bent over rows of damp, stubborn greenery that refuses to cooperate with your calloused fingers. And then it hits you, you forgot to feed the chickens. Again. You run back to the coop, your feet slipping in the morning muck. The chickens stare at you unimpressed. One pecks your ankle. You whisper an apology and throw some barley their way. They don't forgive you. They never do. Back in the field, you resume weeding. Your fingers are numb, your back is sore, and your nose has stopped distinguishing between dirt and manure. You're not even halfway done when your neighbor ambles over. He's 40 but looks 70 with 3 teeth and a walking stick that might actually be a tree root. He doesn't greet you. He just says rain's coming, then walks off like he just shared divine prophecy. And here's the truth, he's probably right. Because medieval peasants were oddly excellent meteorologists. They didn't have radar, but they had knees that ached before a downpour and clouds they could read like gossip. Let's pause here for a historical fact. The average peasant's diet consisted mostly of grains. Bread, porridge, and pottage were the holy trinity. Pottage, by the way, is a stew-like mix of whatever didn't walk away fast enough: turnips, onions, barley, a suspicious mushroom. But today's about bread, specifically your bread. That heavy, dark loaf you gnawed this morning. It was probably made from rye or barley. Wheat was for the wealthy. You, my friend, get fungus. Ergot, to be exact, a grain fungus that sometimes crept into rye and caused hallucinations, spasms, and the occasional belief that your goat was speaking Latin. And now a quirky medieval moment. Some folks believed bread should be left under the bed overnight to settle before eating. Whether it settled flavor or spirits is unclear. What is clear is that underbed storage is a poor choice when you share your sleeping space with animals and possibly someone named Jeff who sleepwalks. You take a break. You sit on a rock, careful to avoid the side covered in moss and mystery. You chew a bite of leftover bread. It cracks. It echoes in your skull. You think you chipped a molar. Again. At this point, you may be wondering, did anyone enjoy food in medieval times? Well, yes, nobles did. They had kitchens, cooks, spices, and teeth. You have a clay pot, an iron pan, and 2 kinds of hope, false and gone. And salt precious. So precious it was used as currency in some places. That's why the word salary comes from salarium Latin for salt money. So next time you sprinkle it on fries, whisper a thank you to the medieval workers who had none. Meanwhile, back in the field, your cousin Gertrude calls you over. She has a new way to harvest turnips that allegedly saves time and spine. You follow her, it doesn't, but you pretend it does because hope is all you have. And then it starts to rain. Your neighbor was right. You feel vindicated and soaked. Your tunic sticks to you like wet cardboard. Your shoes, if you can call them, that fill with mud, and your will to live briefly files a complaint. You squint at the sky. The clouds aren't apologizing. The The chickens are already under shelter, judging you from a distance. Here's your last cheerful thought of the day. You don't get to change clothes. This is your only tunic, and it will dry on your body, stealing heat as it goes. You won't get sick from the rain, but from the mold, the cold, or the neighbor with that mysterious cough. Possibly. It's still not noon. You are soaked, scratched, and mildly insulted by a goose that has no business being that aggressive. But you press on, because in medieval Europe, no one gets a rain check, especially not the peasants. Wet weather means more mud, more slipping, and more opportunities for someone to shout, "You missed a spot," without offering help. After a few more hours of back-breaking work, you finally get a break. Not out of mercy, but because your stomach has started making whale noises and even the chickens look concerned. You trudge back to your hut, which is somehow both damp and dusty. Your home, if you can call it that, is one room. The fire pit in the center smokes like it's holding a grudge. There's no chimney. The smoke just exists. It curls up to the ceiling, coats the beams in black soot, and marinates your lungs in medieval flavor. Now it's time to change clothes. Just kidding. You only own one outfit. That's right. One. Maybe two if you're lucky, but today's not a lucky day. So you do what everyone does, hang your wet tunic by the fire. Pray it doesn't catch and wrap yourself in a coarse wool cloak that smells like everything it's touched since 1324. Let's talk about clothes. You may be wondering what's so bad about medieval fashion. Well, for starters, the word fashion doesn't apply here. You don't pick your outfit picks you, and it usually picks itchiness. Your underclothes, called a chemise if you're fancy, which you're not, are made of linen. If you're female, it's ankle length. If you're male, it's knee length. Everyone wears one, and everyone sweats through it. Every day. Over that, you have your main tunic or kirtle, which is made of wool, heavy wool, scratchy wool. If you're lucky, it's been full a kind of washing and thickening process. If you're unlucky, it's just wool-colored, which is to say a shade of dirty. And belts. Everyone wears a belt. Not for style, for utility, for carrying knives, pouches, keys, and occasionally turnips. It's the medieval utility belt. Batman would be jealous, but also very itchy. You don't wear socks. You wear hose, long tubes of cloth that don't stay up, don't keep you warm, and don't stop rocks from lodging between your toes. Your shoes leather if you're lucky, more like sandals than boots. And the soles are so thin you can feel every individual pebble's life story. Here's a historical fact: to hang your cloak on clothing often doubled as bedding. At night, you take off your belt and lie down fully clothed. Your cloak becomes your blanket. Your damp tunic slowly dries from your body heat, which is convenient and terrible. And now something delightfully odd: buttons existed, but they were mostly decorative at first. Functional buttons didn't become widespread in Europe until the 13th century, and even then, they were expensive. Most peasants tied their clothes with laces or just layered things and hoped for the best. So if your sleeve is too long, roll it up. Too short, call it fashion. If it falls apart, sew it, with whatever thread you can find and a needle that was probably made by your great-grandfather. You finally sit down. The fire sputters, casting flickering shadows on the low walls. You chew another piece of bread, now soggy from the rain, and wish just for a second that you had a spare shirt, or socks, or dignity. And while you think about that, your cousin barges in with a question about whether wool should be dyed before or after fulling. You have no idea, but you nod like you do. That's the medieval way. Now you may think, why not just wash your clothes more often? That's adorable. Water must be hauled, soap is handmade and costs money. Washing takes time, and drying clothes in cold, damp weather, not happening. So instead, people rely on airing out their clothes. You hang them near the fire. You brush off the worst of the mud. If something smells too bad, you sprinkle herbs in it. Lavender, rosemary, or just hope. It's important to remember you're not dirty by choice. You're just medieval. Your neighbor shows up. He smells like onions and damp straw. You don't judge him. You smell like wet goat and anxiety. You swap cloaks for the afternoon. Why? Because his has fewer holes. You call it community, or survival, or both. Here's your quirky fact for the night. Some medieval clothing was so valuable it was mentioned in wills. That's right. You could leave your best tunic to your eldest child and hope it fits. And finally, let's end with a thought to ponder. Did medieval clothing reflect status more than comfort, or were both equally impossible to achieve? You lie back near the fire tunic, half-dry socks, half-soaked, and dreams of dry cotton still a few centuries away. You wake up the next day sore cold and slightly damp as usual. The fire went out during the night. Again, it always does. You've given up relighting it before sunrise because the smoke takes half an hour to stop trying to poison you, and you'd rather freeze in peace. As you sit up stretching your arms and cracking your spine like you're made of tree bark, you hear a faint trumpet in the distance. A procession, a nobleman arriving. Nope, it's just the local bailiff riding past on a very unimpressed-looking horse. He's on his way to collect taxes. You groan. You owe him eggs. You don't have eggs. Because here's the thing you learn fast in the Middle Ages. You are not the main character. You're not a knight. You're not a merchant. You're not even a blacksmith. You're a peasant, and that means everything you do, everything you have, and sometimes even everything you are, belongs to someone else. Feudalism isn't just a complicated word from your school textbook. It's the system that says, hey, nice field you're working, it's not yours. Or cute cottage, also not yours. Or that chicken, definitely not yours, also it just wandered off, good luck. You belong to the land, and the land belongs to Lord Reginald, who has probably never touched a shovel in his life. He lives up in the manor on the hill far from mud fleas and the reality you now call home. He drinks wine. You drink, guess what, ale, again. Let's pause for a historical fact. Most people in medieval Europe were serfs, not slaves, but not quite free either. You could farm your own plot, but you had to give a hefty share to your lord. Sometimes in grain, sometimes in labor, sometimes in the form of giving him your best cow because he sneezed and decided he liked it. And if you didn't pay well, the bailiff came back with friends and clubs, and that trumpet suddenly didn't sound so funny anymore. But don't worry, you're not alone. The village is full of people just like you, tired, muddy, slightly bitter, and trying their best. Gertrude is weaving wool again. She says it helps her forget that her roof leaks directly over her bed. William is sharpening his scythe, even though the blade is mostly rust and ambition. Little Edith is chasing geese with a stick, which is both entertainment and future dinner preparation. And you're supposed to report for communal duty. Today's job helping repair the Lord's road. Yes, his road, not the one to your cottage, the one to his hunting lodge. You sigh, grab your shovel, which is really just a pointed stick, and trudge off. Your feet squish into yesterday's mud, your cloak flaps like a soggy flag, and the geese continue judging you silently. Along the way, you pass the village mill. It belongs to the Lord, of course it does, so if you want your grain ground, you pay a fee. In grain, which is like paying someone to break your bread so they can sell it back to you broken. You arrive at the roadwork site. A group of fellow peasants is already there enthusiastically pretending not to hate this. You join in. There's no formal instruction. Just move that rock and don't let it roll on Jeff this time. And now here's something absurd but real. You may be taxed for using the Lord's oven. Yes, that stone oven in the middle of the village. Not free. Want to bake your bread? Pay up. Or build your own oven, which guess what is illegal? It's called banalités in French law, and it's exactly as fun as it sounds. You take a break from digging and think for a second, what if I just left, ran away, found a new village? Adorable idea. Unfortunately, movement is restricted. Serfs can't just pack up and go. You need permission, which you won't get unless you're dead, and even then your body might still be taxed. But enough about injustice. Let's talk about that one time you met Lord Reginald. He rode by on a white horse wearing more fabric than you've ever owned. He waved. You bowed. He didn't notice. You still talk about it sometimes. It was a good day. And now for your quirky fact, some lords demanded a wedding fee when a serf's daughter got married. That's right, you could be taxed for love, or at least for someone else's. Your back hurts. Your knees ache. Your shovel broke an hour ago, and you've just been pretending to dig with a stick since then. No one's noticed. You wrap up your labor. The bailiff gives you a nod, or maybe it's a glare. Hard to tell under that hat. And you walk home, past the fields, past the mill, past the geese. Always the geese. You wake not to the sound of birds or bells, but to the slow drip of rainwater seeping through the thatch and landing methodically spitefully on your forehead. Drip, drip, drip. You roll to the side only to land in the slightly warmer, slightly squishier pile of damp straw that passes for your mattress. A perfect way to start your day. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed and feel the familiar squelch of mud against your toes. That's not normal in most eras, but here in your charming medieval cottage, it's just the floor. Earth packed tight, slightly uneven, with the occasional pebble that's sharp enough to remind you it's there. Outside it's raining. Of course it is. Because it's always raining. It doesn't pour, it seeps, drizzles, creeps in through your cloak and under your collar, and makes everything just a little bit worse. And it turns every road, every path, and every thought of leaving the house into a mud-slathered obstacle course. But you don't have a choice. You need to get to the fields. The turnips aren't going to weed themselves, and if you let them sit too long, the Lord's steward will remind you that his dinner doesn't care about your excuses. So you pull on your hose still damp from yesterday, and your shoes' thin leather cracked more suggestion than function. And you head out into the mud. Let's talk about mud for a moment, shall we? In the medieval world, mud is a permanent co-star in your life. There are no sidewalks, no cobblestones out here in the countryside. Just soil rain-soaked, churned by hooves and bare feet, laced with traces of every animal you've ever owned, and some you haven't. You walk with the kind of caution that comes only from years of slipping. Every step is deliberate, strategic. You sidestep the deepest puddles not because they're wet, but because they might actually be bottomless. You've seen Jeff disappear up to the shin before. The field greets you like an old friend. An old, angry, thorny friend. Your patch is halfway through planting, halfway underwater, and entirely determined to resist your every effort. But you press on. Kneeling in the dirt fingernails, already dark with soil, you start pulling weeds. It's rhythmic, mindless, kind of meditative if it weren't for the rain, and the goat chewing your left sleeve. After an hour, your back begins to protest. After 2, it screams. You stand, stretch, and hear something crack, not the weeds. You try to ignore it. You look down and realize your knees are caked in muck and a worm is staring at you. You nod at it politely. It nods back. Probably. Here's a historical reality. Most medieval peasants spent their entire lives within a few kilometers of their birthplace. The average person didn't travel. Roads were bad, maps were worse, and the danger of stepping into the unknown high. Your whole world is your village, your fields, your family, and occasionally the fair if you're lucky and the weather doesn't try to kill you. Back to the weeding. The sun never shows up, just grayness pressing down like a wool blanket someone spilled soup on. Your stomach growls. You remember your lunch is in your pocket, half a piece of rye bread, slightly soggy and a dried onion. A real treat. You chew slowly, carefully. The bread cracks a molar. The onion burns. But it's food. And then as if summoned by your suffering, your neighbor appears. Old Elric, beard like moss, eyes like clouds, always smiling like he knows something terrible. He sits on a nearby rock and says, "Looks like we're in for a bad harvest." Then he just sits. You're not sure if he's helping or haunting. You keep weeding. The mud deepens. The wind picks up. A rooster screams in the distance like it's seen the future and didn't like it. Let's pause for something quirky. Some medieval villagers lined their floors with rushes or straw layered again and again, sometimes for years without cleaning. Bones, crumbs, bits of cloth, even teeth all settled into the layers. It was like living atop an archaeological lasagna. When royalty visited, they'd sprinkle herbs over the top and call it fresh. You remember your own floor back home? It's probably holding water again. The bucket under the leak hasn't been emptied in 2 days. Last week it overflowed into the fire pit. That was fun. The work continues. You and your fellow villagers rarely speak during the day. Not out of rudeness, but because the energy required to form sentences is better spent pulling, lifting, carrying. The only sounds are the squelch of feet, the rustle of crops, and the occasional grunt when someone finds a rock where a carrot should be. The rain finally stops around mid-afternoon. Not that it matters. Everything is already soaked, including your hopes. You head to the stream to wash your hands, though the water is barely clearer than the mud. You dip your arms in scrub with a rock and watch as little flecks of dirt swirl away, along with what remains of your skin's natural oils. You dry your hands on your tunic. It makes no difference. You're always damp now, permanently. You trudge home. Every step is heavier. Your body is tired, but not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. It's the medieval kind. The kind that lives in your bones and occasionally reminds you that your body will give out before your work does. You step into your hut and breathe in the familiar scent of wet straw, stale smoke, and a hint of goat. Home, sweet home. The fire is out, of course it is. You bend down, coax it back to life with the tiniest, driest twigs you can find. The smoke rises quickly, filling your little space with a cough-inducing haze. But it's warm, and that's enough. As you sit on your creaking stool, rubbing warmth back into your fingers, you remember something someone once said. At least you have land to work. And you wonder if that person had ever pulled weeds for 12 hours in the rain. The sun for once dares to peek through the clouds. You don't trust it. It's too bright, too sudden. It feels like a setup. But still, you open one eye, then the other, and sit up slowly, like a sack of bones that's been dropped too many times. Today is market day. That phrase, so simple, so full of possibility, means everything in a world with no internet, no books, and no escape. It's a break from the fields, from the mud, from the monotony of turnips and weather complaints. Market day is your movie night, your social feed, your one chance to trade 2 eggs for something that doesn't taste like despair. You splash water on your face, cold, of course. No soap, just a sharp inhale and a few drops of relief. You brush your straw off your tunic and tie your belt tight. Not because it fits well, but because the last time it slipped, your trousers introduced themselves to the entire village. You grab your basket, wicker cracked barely holding together, and begin the walk into the village center. The path is familiar, past the mill, past the well, past the house that always smells like pickled cabbage. People are already gathering. Not many, maybe 40, maybe 50. That's a crowd in your world. Stalls are popping up, made from planks of wood balanced on barrels. Canvas sheets flap overhead, weighed down with rocks and questionable rope. Chickens screech from crates. Goats bleat like professional complainers. And someone somewhere is already yelling about onions. Market day isn't elegant. It's messy, loud, and smells like livestock. But it's alive, and that counts for a lot. You make your way to the baker's stall. He has white bread today, real white bread made from wheat. It's soft, golden, and smells like magic. You stare at it too long. The baker notices and raises an eyebrow. You look away and ask for rye, half a loaf slightly burned with a complimentary glare. Next up, the brewer's table. He offers a jug of ale that he claims is less watery than last week. You take a sniff. It smells like feet. You buy it anyway. It's safer than water. Then you spot her, the herb woman. Cloaked in layers of fabric that somehow all smell like mint, she stands by a table lined with little cloth bundles, jars of dried leaves, and something that might be a squirrel tail. She looks at you hard. You nod politely. She hands you a pouch and mutters for the rash. You never mention the rash. You thank her and back away slowly. Let's pause for a historical truth. Medieval marketplaces were taxed. Everything was taxed. Sellers paid for stalls. Buyers paid for entry in some towns. Even the transactions could be taxed. If you bought 2 onions, someone somewhere wrote it down and made a note to charge you later, or sooner, probably both. You pass a man selling spoons, wooden, slightly warped, with hand-carved faces that may or may not be saints. He offers you one with a wink and whispers, "Blessed by a bishop." You politely decline, remembering the last time someone tried to sell you holy cheese. A loud voice draws your attention. The tax collector is here. He walks with the slow, purposeful stride of someone who's never carried a bucket of water in his life. His boots are shiny. His ledger is big. He pauses at each stall, takes a look, scratches something in his book, and moves on. He sees you. He nods. You nod back, then hide your onions behind your cloak. Quirky fact incoming. In some towns, taxes were paid in kind, not money but goods. A dozen eggs, a sack of grain, a chicken with fewer feathers than pride, and if you didn't have enough. They'd take your cooking pot, or your bench, or once someone's hat. You pass by the fabric stall, a small piece of dyed cloth blue if you squint is on display. You touch it gently. The vendor narrows her eyes. You pretend you weren't thinking of stealing it. Which you weren't, probably. You trade your last radish for a strip of dried apple. It's chewy, sweet. A moment of luxury in a world where dessert usually means finding a berry that doesn't kill you. You pause near the musicians, just two of them, one with a flute carved from bone, the other with a drum that doubles as a stool. They're playing something that might be a song or a protest. You don't care, it's rhythm. And that's enough to make you tap your foot in the mud. Then you hear it, the unmistakable honk of a goose. You turn, it's there. The same goose from last market, still watching, still judging. You cross the road, it follows, you pick up speed, so does it. You dart behind a cart, the goose waits. This is your life now. You hide behind the fishmonger's stall. The smell buys you 3 minutes. You use them to inhale a handful of dried peas someone dropped. Hunger makes you fast. Dignity helps you forget what just happened. You take one last walk through the stalls before heading home. A child offers you a frog. You ask why. He says it's lucky. You believe him. You carry the frog for 4 steps before it jumps away. You let it go. It deserves better. As you leave the market, your basket is heavier than before. Onions, dried peas, half a loaf of rye, a sprig of mint, and something you're not entirely sure is legal. It's a good haul. You pass your neighbor on the road. She asks what you got. You tell her. She nods. Better than last time, she says. You agree. Last time you came home with moldy cheese and a stomachache. The sun dips behind a cloud. The sky goes gray again. A drizzle starts. The world exhales. You arrive home. The fire is still out. Of course it is. You relight it with damp kindling and one last breath of patience. You sit. You eat a piece of dried apple. You stare at the onions. You survived market day. And the goose didn't follow you home. You win. You dream of clean water. A hot bath. Bubbles. A bar of soap that doesn't scratch your skin off. Maybe even a sponge, the kind that doesn't still look like it was just part of a sheep. You dream of warmth, of lavender-scented steam, of not sharing the water with anything that has more than 4 legs. And then you wake up. It's still dark out. The fire died sometime in the night, leaving a thin frost on the inside of your window, or rather the hole in the wall you politely call a window. You pull your cloak tighter and rub your hands together. Your fingers are stiff. Not from the cold, though that certainly helps. They're stiff from the layers of grime, the cracked knuckles, and the memory of the turnips that fought back. You need to wash. Now, before you get excited, let's set expectations. This is not spa day. This is splash yourself with freezing water and hope your body forgives you day. You shuffle outside past the pile of firewood that's mostly damp and mostly bark. You head to the barrel, your so-called washing station. It's filled with rainwater and floating things. You don't ask what. You dip your hands in and immediately regret every decision that led to this point. You splash your face. It's shocking, icy, alive. You're pretty sure your soul tries to exit through your left eyebrow. You take a rag, a piece of linen, so old it might remember the plague, and scrub under your arms. 1, 2, 3 wipes. That'll have to do. Soap hilarious. Let's pause for a historical fact. Contrary to popular belief, medieval people did wash. Not every day and not with hot water unless they were rich, but they tried. Streams, barrels, even communal baths when available were used, but access to clean water was limited, and winters brutal. You look down at your feet, mud-caked. Again. You briefly consider a foot wash, then remember the last time you caught a cold from standing barefoot too long. You pull your hose up over your calves and pretend that counts as clean enough. Now about bathing. The village bathhouse was burned down last year. Someone blamed it for a rash. Before that, it was open 1 day a week. Mixed bathing, all ages, all smells. You didn't go often, not because of modesty, but because the last time you left dirtier than you arrived. You once heard that in the big cities, rich folks have bathing tubs made of metal, and servants bring in hot water bucket by bucket. You imagined that once. Tried to picture yourself in a warm tub, sipping something sweet, being scrubbed behind the ears by someone named Elise. And then a goat sneezed on you, and you remembered where you were. A quirky truth. Some medieval people believed that bathing too often could make you sick. They thought open pores let disease in, so instead they wore linen underclothes to soak up the dirt and change those when possible. Bathing was sometimes seen as risky, even sinful, especially in colder climates. Still you long for soap. Real soap. Not this gray lump of animal fat and ash that smells like last week's stew. You used it once. Your skin has never quite forgiven you, and the lather non-existent. It just melts into slime and leaves you smelling faintly of regret. You dry your face on your sleeve. It doesn't help. The sleeve is just as wet. Then it's time for laundry. Yes, really. You've been avoiding it for days, but your one good tunic now stands on its own in the corner. You can't delay it any longer. You fetch your wooden wash tub and the bucket. Fill it with stream water, cold and full of suspicious particles. You toss in your tunic. You scrub with rocks. You stomp on it with your bare feet, trying not to think about the last time you used this tub to soak turnips. And now for the fun part, drying. There are no clotheslines, just rope and wind and prayer. You hang your tunic on a line stretched between two posts. It flaps in the breeze like a flag of surrender. You hope the dog doesn't pull it down this time. You sit on your stool and wait, and wait, and wait. Drying takes hours, days even if the weather's bad. So you sit there wrapped in your scratchy wool cloak, smelling like wood smoke and onions, hoping the sun does its job. In the meantime, you watch the neighbors. Gertrude is beating a rug. Thomas is scraping mud off his shoes with a knife. The children are throwing pebbles at a tree. One of them misses and hits a chicken. The chicken wins the fight. You sigh and close your eyes. Someday you think bathing will be simple, warm, private, frequent. Someday, people will have soap that smells like flowers, water that runs from walls, and towels that aren't just old curtains. But not today. Today you're thankful the goat hasn't peed in your wash bucket. Some households place protective charms under their pillows, herbs, carvings, tiny iron trinkets to ward off nightmares and evil spirits. You close your eyes and try again. Eventually morning wins. You wake with a sore neck, cold toes, and straw in places straw should never be. But you survive the night, again. And that counts. Nightfall comes slowly. There's no switch to flip, no lamp to light with a gentle click. Just the sun melting behind the hills like a tired candle, and the slow rise of shadows in every corner of your cottage. You reach for the fire. It's barely glowing. A few tired embers like old men grumbling under their breath. You toss in a bundle of twigs and blow gently. Smoke curls up like a ghost doing stretches. It coughs, sputters, then finally catches. Light flickers across your walls. Homey if you ignore the rats. Because tonight we talk about sleep. Let's start with your bed. It's not a bed, not really. It's a raised wooden platform slightly tilted, covered in straw that's been flattened by years of you trying not to freeze. There's no pillow, just a folded sack. No blanket, just your cloak. And you'll be fighting your brother for it again in about 10 minutes. The straw pokes your back, your elbows, your dreams. The smell, a mix of sweat, hay, and something faintly cabbage adjacent. You lie down anyway, because there's nowhere else to go. You've been upright for 14 hours and your knees have started writing letters of complaint to your spine. As you settle in, you listen. Outside crickets, distant hooves, the occasional bark. Inside, the gentle scurrying of mice under the floorboards. They're loud tonight, probably arguing over your leftover breadcrumbs. You try to sleep, you close your eyes. And that's when the church bell tolls. Every 3 hours. Yes, so welcome to the medieval sleep schedule, dear listener. Because in your charming, rustic, flea-friendly world, people often slept in 2 shifts. It's called segmented sleep. First sleep came after dusk and lasted a few hours. Then people would wake up around midnight, pray or read if they could stoke the fire sometimes, visit neighbors. Then came second sleep until dawn. You stir at the first bell. It's not loud, but it lives inside your bones. You've heard it since birth. It marks the hours like a heartbeat, insistent, rhythmic, inescapable. You roll over, your back protests, your sibling kicks you. The mouse under the bed sneezes. Somewhere a chicken squawks like it's seen something it can't unsee. You drift into your first sleep. It's shallow, full of twitching limbs and half-formed thoughts. You dream of bread, real bread, with butter. And then the bread starts talking and turns into your landlord. You wake up in a sweat. The fire's low again. You poke it. It hisses. You sit in the dim light, wrapping your cloak tighter. You whisper a prayer, or hum a song, or stare into the dark and wonder what the sky looks like beyond the smoke. Your neighbor knocks once. Not to visit, just to make sure you haven't stolen his turnips. You haven't. This time, the second sleep begins without warning. One moment you're awake, the next gone. Deep, quiet, still. And then movement. You bolt upright. The goat is in the house, again. You forgot to latch the door. It wanders in like it owns the place, bleats once, and knocks over a jar of dried peas. You wave your arms, mutter something about demons, and chase it out with a broom. Your sibling doesn't wake up. He never does. You collapse back into the straw. Your heart is racing. The fire's out again. You pull your cloak over your head and pray for just 2 hours of uninterrupted nothingness. Let's add some historical spice. Beds were often shared not just by couples, but by entire families. Privacy non-existent. Modesty adaptable. You'd sleep next to your parents' siblings, sometimes guests. And yes, animals too, especially in winter. But there were bright sides. Sleep wasn't rushed. There were no clocks to chase. You woke when the world woke. You slept when the dark told you to. Time moved slowly, kindly. Even if the mice didn't. A quirky detail for you. Some households place protective charms under their pillows, herbs, carvings, tiny iron trinkets to ward off nightmares and evil spirits. You've got a rock, a smooth one. You think it helps. Outside, the wind picks up. The shutters rattle like bones in a basket. You close your eyes and try again. Eventually, morning wins. You wake with a sore neck, cold toes, and straw in places straw should never be. But you survived the night again. And that counts. Morning, again. It's not like you forgot it was coming, but still it feels personal. The rooster lets loose another furious cry like it's been personally offended by the concept of sleep. A sheep bleats somewhere in the distance, and the pig starts snorting like it's got urgent opinions. You pull the cloak over your face. It doesn't help. The day begins anyway. You sit up slowly like bread dough rising out of spite. Your back cracks. Your knees complain. You've got dirt in your ear, again. You're not sure how it gets there. Maybe the straw in your bedding is alive. You wouldn't be surprised. Your stomach growls loudly. But you ignore it for now. Because today's a fasting day. Yes, welcome to the holy calendar where more than a third of the year is dedicated to some kind of fasting or food restriction. That's right. You've barely got food to begin with, and now you're not supposed to eat half of what's left. Today's restriction, no meat. Which sounds simple enough until you realize that for medieval peasants, meat was already a luxury. So what does not eating meat mean when you never had it in the first place? It means more porridge and cold peas And maybe some dried fish if the market gods were kind last week. You shuffle toward the table, actually a wooden plank balanced on two barrels, and look at your breakfast options. Yesterday's bread. Now even harder, a bit of cold pottage made of mystery roots and a single onion that's judging you. You chew slowly. The bread resists. The pottage is bland but filling. The onion stares. You stare back. And then you smell it. Meat roasting somewhere nearby. You blink in confusion. It's not a holiday. It's not a feast day. Who has meat? You open the door and step outside. There across the village square you see it a noble household. They're roasting pork on a fasting day. And they can, because rules bend for them. The church offers indulgences, permissions, exceptions, especially if you're rich enough to donate for divine flexibility. Let's pause for a historical fact. During fasting periods, the church restricted meat, dairy, and animal fats. But wealthier people often bought special dispensations to skirt the rules. Meanwhile, the poor stuck to gruel beans in a deepening sense of culinary despair. You take another bite of onion just to spite the smell. And now for the emotional kicker. You're not even sure you'd like meat if you had it. You've heard stories, juicy roast, dripping fat bones you can chew for hours. But when you do get meat, usually a thin, gristly chunk once a year at Harvest Festival, it's often so salted and dry that it feels like chewing leather, with regret. Back to your day. You head to the fields, empty stomach grumbling like thunder. The sun is out now, glaring like it knows you're hungry. You bend to pull weeds and your joints snap in protest. Every motion takes effort. You sweat, you ache. You begin to dream not of meat, but of butter. Real butter, rich golden, spread thick on warm bread. You've had it once, 4 winters ago, you still remember. Someone nearby coughs, a deep, wet sound. You don't turn, you don't ask. You just keep working. Lunch is a handful of boiled barley and a slice of coarse bread. You dip the bread in a bowl of weak broth. It tastes like warm water with ambition. A bee buzzes around your face. You wave it off weakly. The bee wins. You notice your neighbor Thomas sitting under a tree. He's eating something. You squint. Is that cheese? You walk over casually, sit beside him. He offers you a bite. It's hard cheese aged until it's basically edible stone. But it's cheese. You nod in gratitude and gnaw on it like it owes you money. It squeaks against your teeth. You nearly cry. Here's a quirky tidbit. Medieval people believed certain cheeses could cause dreams, improve fertility, or even ward off illness. Some monasteries had entire cheese chambers carefully cataloged. You meanwhile keep your cheese in a hole under the bed and pray the rats don't find it first. By the time the sun starts to lower, you're dizzy. Maybe from hunger, maybe from dehydration. You haven't had a good drink all day, just sips from a shared jug of ale, which tastes increasingly like old socks. You return home, light the fire, and begin preparing supper lentils boiled in water with a few herbs. It smells not bad, but it's thin like soup that tried to exist and then gave up. You sit by the fire bowl in hand thinking. You've never known fullness, not really. Hunger is your background music. It sharpens your thoughts and dulls your body. And you wonder, is this how people have always lived? Or is it just your bad luck to be born on the muddy side of history? Your sibling asks if there's more food. You say no, he nods. You both stare into the fire. Here's your last quirky discovery for today. In some villages, cats were fed better than children, not out of cruelty, but because cats caught mice. And fewer mice meant more grain survived. So yes, Whiskers gets milk and you get lentils. That's just how it is. You lie back and let the lentil stew settle in your stomach like a guest who didn't bring gifts. The fire crackles softly. Outside the village is falling asleep, one goat, one creaky door, one sigh at a time. But your mind doesn't rest. You remember something the priest said last Sunday about gluttony, about how too much food dulls the spirit. You nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because you forgot what too much food even feels like. Still, you try to believe it. That hunger makes you humble. That self-denial brings you closer to heaven. That maybe this growling stomach means your soul is better fed. But you also remember Lord Reginald. Last spring, he hosted a feast, a proper one. Chicken stuffed with herbs, trays of honey-roasted vegetables, truffles, yes, actual truffles and imported nuts. You and the other villagers watched from the edge of the field, invited only to carry trays and collect bones. You stole a fig, just one. You still think about it. Soft, sweet, a burst of sun in your mouth. Worth the scolding that followed. Let's talk about meat briefly. In theory, it was everywhere: pigs, chickens, cows. In practice, most of it was for your lord, or for holidays, or for the church. You might get a scrap during Easter, a bone at Christmas, and if you're very lucky, a bite of salted pork during harvest. Most of the time, your protein comes from legumes, eggs, when the hens feel generous, or salted fish. And that's assuming the fish wasn't already too far gone. You've eaten things that moved when they shouldn't have. You think of fish again and sigh. Not just any fish, today's fish. Because you passed a merchant earlier, one of those smug men from the river towns with shiny boots and too many rings. He was selling dried cod. It looked edible. It also cost more than your shoes. You offered him 3 onions and your best smile. He laughed and offered you the smell of cod instead. You took it. It was decent. The fire pops, a coal jumps out and lands near your toes. You nudge it back with a stick. You wonder how many calories are in charcoal. Probably not enough. Still, you're not alone in this. Gertrude down the path says she hasn't eaten meat in 2 months. Thomas claims he ate squirrel last week, but no one believes him. The miller's wife traded a comb for a duck leg. The duck didn't seem happy about it. And the kids, they adapt. They turn hunger into games, pretend feasts. They chew grass and call it salad. They dig for roots just in case. You watch them sometimes. It's both heartbreaking and weirdly hopeful. And now, just before bed, you do what everyone does. You check your pantry. It's not a pantry. It's a wooden box under the bench. Inside, 3 shriveled carrots, a half loaf of dry bread, 1 egg, and something that might have been cheese a week ago. You sigh. Then you cover it back up and whisper, "Not tonight." You crawl into bed. The straw crackles beneath you. Your stomach murmurs again. You pull your cloak over your head and pretend you're full. You imagine warm soup, soft rolls, a fire that doesn't bite your eyes. Someday, or maybe never. Still, there's always tomorrow. Someone might drop a fig, or forget to lock the smokehouse. Stranger things have happened. Your stomach is still whispering secrets to your ribs when the rooster lets out its morning scream. You've stopped calling it a crow that implies some elegance. This is more like an alarm that's been dropped down a well and is trying to climb back out using only rage. You sit up. Your spine doesn't like it. Your knees file a formal complaint, and your eyes, they stay half closed, resigned to the life they're stuck looking at. But today, something's off. You can feel it in the air. The usual morning dampness has a bite to it. Not cold, something else. A tension, a quiet buzzing. You step outside and sniff. The sun is bright. The sky is clear. And there's a man vomiting behind the blacksmith's house. Someone is sick. Now, before you panic, let's clarify something. Sickness is normal here. It visits often. It overstays its welcome. It passes from person to person like a hot potato covered in germs. There's always a cough, a fever, a child with spots, a grandmother who just needs rest and then doesn't wake up. But this feels different. You hear whispers. They say it started near the docks. 3 dead in one night. The priest won't come near them. I heard the pigs are even dying. You swallow. Slowly. You're not near any docks. You don't have pigs, but panic travels faster than carts. Let's talk about medicine, or what medieval people thought was medicine. You feel unwell. You visit the village healer. She wraps you in damp cloths, mutters a prayer, and recommends crushed garlic and goat's milk. If you're lucky, she'll bleed you with a rusty knife. That's called balancing the humors, one of 4 imaginary fluids that allegedly control your health. Too much blood, drain it. Too much yellow bile, eat parsley. Too much black bile, pray harder. And if you don't get better, well, clearly you sin. You walk toward the town square. The gossip is already ahead of you. Old Elric is waving his arms like a prophet, claiming it's divine punishment for the ale festival last week. The baker swears it's bad air. The priest hasn't come out yet, which is worrying. He always comes out to lecture. You stop at the well. There's a sign now. A smear of red paint across the stone. It says, "Don't drink." You stare at it. That's your only water source. You feel the dryness creep into your mouth, your skin, your bones. You ask someone what happened. They say a girl drank from it last night. By morning, she was foaming at the mouth. By noon, she was gone. And now her house is boarded up. No one went in. No one came out. You head back to your cottage, quickly. You shut the door. You push the bench in front of it. You look around. What do you even have? Some onions, dried peas, a handful of mint. You boil water. It might help. It might not. But it gives your hands something to do besides shake. Your sibling walks in. He's pale, says his head hurts. You tell him it's just the heat. He nods. But you're already counting the days, just in case. Let's pause for a historical truth. In the absence of modern science, illness was often explained by religion or astrology. Plagues were sent by God. Fevers caused by Mars rising in the wrong house. One theory even blamed earthquakes for disturbing the balance of disease beneath the earth. People also blame the Jews, or beggars, or women who spoke too confidently. Anyone really, as long as it wasn't their fault, which of course it was. Quirky side note. During outbreaks, people carried posies of herbs to clean the air. Lavender, rosemary, mint. Sometimes they just stuffed it in their noses. The result, a garden that smelled vaguely of fear. You do the same now. You hang a bundle of herbs near the window. You sprinkle vinegar on the floor. You whisper a little prayer, not because you believe, but because it's quiet and quiet helps. The next day, 2 more are dead. No funerals, just silence. A man covers the bodies in rags and drags them toward the woods. No one offers help. No one watches too long. Eye contact might be contagious. You boil your clothes. You sleep apart from your brother. You avoid the market. The streets are empty now. The goose doesn't even honk anymore. And then for a while, nothing. Days pass. No new deaths. No new fevers. You start to hope. Then Thomas knocks. He's sweating, pale, and says he needs garlic and salt. You hand him both. You don't ask questions. That night the bell tolls, not once, not twice, 7 times. 7 souls gone in one night. The village is quiet after that. Too quiet. Even the mice seem hesitant. You lie in bed, straw pokes through your shirt, cloak over your face, breath shallow. Your sibling turns in his sleep. You listen. Is that a cough or just a snore? Your mind spins. What if it reaches your door? What if it's already here? What if it leaves you alive but alone? And yet somehow you sleep. The fire glows faintly. The herbs near the window flutter. And you dream of fresh bread, clean air, and hands that don't tremble. You wake to the sound of coughing. It's not your sibling this time. It's farther away, faint, ragged, like someone trying to hold their lungs inside their body with nothing but sheer willpower. You lie still, eyes open, watching the soft flicker of morning light seep in through the cracks in the wooden wall. You don't move right away. You don't breathe too deeply. You've learned that stillness can be safety. If you stay quiet long enough, the world might forget you exist. But the world never forgets. Outside, the bell tolls once. A single low, mournful note. Someone's gone. Again. You sit up slowly, cloak still wrapped around your shoulders. The fire has died. The air bites at your skin, crisp and dry. Your stomach reminds you that you haven't eaten since a handful of peas and half an onion the day before. You ignore it. Instead, you pray. Not because you're devout though you try, but because it's one of the few things left that hasn't betrayed you. Bread molds, friends vanish, the water turns, but prayers at least stay quiet. Today is Sunday, or at least you think it is. It's hard to tell when the days blur together in a cycle of labor fear and interrupted sleep. But your sibling says it is, and the village hasn't yet burned down, so you take it as a good sign. You wash with cold water, more ritual than cleansing now, and dress in your least-patched tunic. It's still damp. Everything is always damp. You smooth it down with your hands more out of habit than vanity. There's no one to impress anymore. Then together you walk to the church. It's small, stone, drafty. The roof leaks near the back pews and the left wall has been leaning slightly for 3 years. But it stands. And in a time when everything else seems to fall, bodies trust even teeth that mean something. You sit in silence with the others. Not many of them today, maybe 20. Down from 40 last week. You recognize every face and every absence. Old Marjorie's spot is empty. So is the baker's son. The pews look stretched like they've lost their reason to hold anyone. The priest enters. His robes are simpler now. He walks slower, speaks softer. He stopped talking about damnation. These days he just says, "Hold on," and somehow that feels more divine than anything else. He begins the sermon. You don't really listen. Your mind wanders. You think about God, sure, but also about soup and boots and what you'd say to your mother if she were still here. You think about how many of your neighbors have started looking at each other with the kind of expression usually reserved for funerals. You wonder if they look at you the same way. Then the priest mentions judgment, the final one. You snort quietly, because in your world every day feels like Judgment Day. Every cough, every fever, every skipped meal. You're judged by your work, your worth, your ability to stand upright without groaning. Let's pause for a historical fact in medieval Europe. Religion wasn't just part of life, it was life. The church told you when to eat, when to fast, when to rest, and when to repent. Sundays were for worship and fear, because sermons often focused on hell, not hope. But not today. Today the priest reads from Psalms, about valleys and shadows and death. You nod along, not because you understand every word, but because you've lived every one of them. After the service, people gather outside. They talk carefully, quietly. The herbalist says she's found a new root that keeps the lungs dry. Thomas claims he drank ale boiled with garlic and hasn't coughed since. Someone else swears by smoke sitting in it, breathing it in, letting it choke the evil out. You don't contribute, you just listen. Then the blacksmith's wife asks the question everyone's been avoiding. What happens if it doesn't stop? Silence, even the wind pauses. You all stare at the ground, as if the answer might be written there, hidden between the muddy footprints and chicken scratches. It isn't. Back at home, you boil water again. No herbs this time, just heat, just steam. You sit beside it and breathe it in. You think of your mother's stories, how she once said steam could open the heart. You never knew if she meant it literally or not. Your sibling is quiet. He stares at the wall. You give him a piece of stale bread. He chews it slowly like it takes effort. It probably does. Later, you visit the graveyard. Not to mourn, not yet, but to check if they've made space. They have. 3 new holes, no names yet, just space. You kneel beside the oldest marker, your grandfather's, and pick weeds from the base. He never liked mess, even in death. Here's a quirky detail. Medieval people believed the soul lingered near the body for days after death. That's why some left food at graves, or whispered confessions, or sang. You hum a little tune, off-key, but honest. Back home, you patch your tunic. You check your pantry, 3 onions, a bit of dried apple, and something green you hope is mint. You count your matches. 2. You sharpen your knife not for defense, but to scrape the burned bits off bread. You watch the sunset, and you realize something strange. You're still here. The world is smaller, quieter, sadder, but you're in it, breathing, moving, stirring soup, folding cloth, lighting fire, living. Later that night, long after your sibling drifts into a shallow sleep, you stay up lying, still eyes half open, listening. The wind rustles through the thatch roof. The fire gives one last sigh. Then all is quiet except for the sound of your own heartbeat and the occasional creak of wood settling, like your house is trying to exhale too. You remember something the priest said not today, but months ago, back when the pews were still full and the world felt only slightly doomed. He said faith is not in the moment of glory, it's in the silence after fear. At the time it sounded poetic. Now it just sounds like someone trying to explain why nothing makes sense. You glance toward your brother, curled into the smallest shape possible under the fraying blanket. His feet poke out. You remember when he used to laugh in his sleep. Now he just curls tighter, like he's trying to fold himself out of existence. You get up quietly and light the tiniest stub of a candle. One of only 3 you've been saving. You set it near the window and open the shutters just a crack. Outside, the village sleeps. You see the outline of rooftops hunched like tired shoulders. The distant light from the manor house flickers almost mockingly high above. You imagine Lord Reginald sipping warm wine draped in fur, speaking softly about survival, while his servants boil his bathwater. You breathe in. The air is cold, but for once not sharp, almost clean. Then you see her. A woman walking slowly, cloaked, barefoot. She moves like a ghost, silent, drifting with no purpose but forward. You don't recognize her. Maybe she's from the next village. Maybe she's not from anywhere. She stops near the well, places something at its base, bows her head, then vanishes into the dark. You don't sleep for a while after that. You lie down eventually, candle out, eyes open. You listen for the bell. It doesn't come, and in the stillness your thoughts stretch out like frost on a window. You think of the bread you'll need to bake tomorrow, the firewood that won't split itself, the neighbors you haven't seen in days, the graves that grow like weeds. And then you think, what if we make it? What if this ends? What will be left? Who will be left? It's a thought you tug deep into your chest next to the hunger and the worry and the memory of butter. Morning comes later than usual. Or maybe it just feels that way. Time, after all, is more of a suggestion in your village than a certainty. There are no clocks, just Bell's shadows and the vague agreement that when the sun hits that tree, it's probably mid-morning. You sit up slowly, your neck protests, your shoulder cracks. Your cloak once again has slipped halfway off in the night. You shiver, then reach for the firewood. There's not much left. Just a few soft, half-rotten logs and some twigs you saved from yesterday's walk to the stream. You rebuild the fire with the tenderness of someone lighting a candle for the dead. The smoke curls upward. It finds your face immediately as always. You cough. The day begins. Your sibling is still asleep. His breathing is even, but his cheeks are pale. You cover him with your cloak quietly and step outside. The air is cold, damp. The ground is soft, muddy in places, cracking in others. The sky is a dull gray, but not threatening, just tired, like everything else. You walk through the village with cautious steps, not because of bandits or beasts, those are rare, but because the paths are uneven and one wrong step could twist your ankle and ruin your month. At the edge of the square, you pause. There's a cart there. Not a merchant cart. A body cart. Simple, flat wooden, 2 wheels. A sheet pulled loosely over what lies beneath. No names, no ceremony, just collection. Someone, probably the blacksmith's apprentice, is pulling it slowly toward the chapel. You nod to him. He nods back. That's all there is to say. Let's talk about death. Because in your world, it's not rare. It's not whispered. It doesn't wait until people are old or ready or surrounded by soft music and goodbyes. It just happens. Fast, quiet, unexplained. Sometimes it looks like a fever. Sometimes it's a cough that doesn't stop. Sometimes it's a wound that never closes. And sometimes it's a goat kicking you square in the chest. That happened to Henry. No one laughed. Not during the funeral anyway. Your village doesn't fear death so much as accept it. You've seen too many people go to pretend it's rare. Still, it is feared, but not always in the way you'd think. What people fear most is a bad death, dying without confession, without rites, without being buried on holy ground. Because if that happens, your soul wanders. And no one wants to be a wanderer after death. Life is tiring enough as it is. You walk to the chapel. Inside, the priest is preparing the small altar. He moves slowly, deliberately. His hands tremble slightly, not from age, but from exhaustion. You help him light the candles. He nods in thanks, but says nothing. The cart is brought inside. There are two bodies this time, covered in linens. The cloth is thin, and you can see the outlines. One tall, one small. A man and a child, maybe. The priest mutters the rites. You don't know all the words, you just know the rhythm, the pauses, the way the last few lines always feel like punctuation. Outside, the villagers wait in silence. The burial is quick, the ground is soft. There are no headstones, just wooden markers plain blank to be carved later. Maybe. You scatter a handful of dirt over the grave. So does Gertrude. So does Thomas. The priest closes his book. That's it. The crowd begins to drift, one by one, some in groups, most alone. Eyes down, hands clasped, shoulders slightly hunched. No one says it, but everyone feels it. The village is quieter now. You head home. On the way, you pass the healer's cottage. She's outside hanging herbs. Her eyes are sharp, her fingers stained from roots and smoke. She sees you and gestures you over. You hesitate, then go. She presses a bundle into your hands, lavender sage and something sharp that stings your fingers slightly. For the air, she says. You nod. Boil it, she adds. Breathe it in. You ask if it works. She shrugs. Better than nothing. And in your world, better than nothing is often the best you get. Here's a historical truth. In medieval Europe, death was deeply tied to religion. The process of dying, confession, last rites, burial was as important as life itself. A proper death meant a smoother journey to the afterlife. People feared sudden death not just because of loss, but because it left the soul unprepared. There was even a name for it, ars moriendi, the art of dying well. You return home and set the herbs in the boiling pot. The scent rises, earthy, bitter, almost comforting. Your sibling stirs. You offer him a sip of warm water. He takes it without words. You sit together watching the fire. He asks you, are we safe? You don't answer right away. You don't lie. You just say we're still here. Later, after he falls asleep again, you open the window. The air smells faintly of sage and something burning in the distance. You see a candle in the widow's house. You see smoke rising from the blacksmith's chimney. You see a small flickering light far away, maybe someone traveling, maybe someone lost. And you feel it. Even now, even after everything, life continues. You wake up to the sound of footsteps. Not loud, not hurried, just soft, steady steps outside your window, crunching gently over dried leaves and patches of frost. You freeze listening. There's a pause. Then the steps continue fading into the distance. You wait another moment before sitting up. The fire has gone out again. No surprise, it always does. You wrap yourself in your cloak, tiptoe over to the door, and press your ear against it. Nothing. Just wind, and a distant rooster who clearly doesn't understand how mornings work. You crack the door open. No one's there, just a few boot prints in the dirt. Fresh, not yours. You step outside, keeping close to the wall. The village is still asleep, or pretending to be. Smoke curls lazily from one or two chimneys. A dog barks far off. Someone coughs. But otherwise, stillness. Then from the direction of the church, a bell tolls. Once. Twice. 3 times. You don't wait for the 4th. You follow the sound through the square where the well is now boarded up, past the mill where the wheel has stopped turning, up the slight hill to the edge of the graveyard where the priest is standing in his thin robe, eyes on the ground. Another burial. This one's small, quick. Only a few people attend. The rest are too tired or too scared. The body's already wrapped. No one wants to see faces anymore. You help shovel dirt over the grave. You don't ask who it was if you knew it would be harder. Later, back in the square, someone posts a notice, written in thick charcoal on a wooden plank. By order of the steward, no gathering in groups of more than 4. The chapel is closed. The road to the west is sealed. No entry to outsiders. Violators will be punished. You read it 3 times. You don't know who wrote it. The steward hasn't been seen in days. But the handwriting is neat and the nails are fresh. You don't question it. You just step back and blend in with the others. Gertrude Thomas, the old miller. All of you reading the same words with the same sinking feeling. This isn't just a bad season anymore. This is something else. Let's talk about control. Because in times of fear, power doesn't disappear, it tightens. In your world, laws are fluid. They shift with the wind, with the harvest, with the mood of the local lord. One day you can fish freely. The next you're fined for stealing from his stream. One day you're allowed to gather in the square. The next you're told it's unsafe. And the people, they obey. Not because they trust, but because they're tired. Because rebellion takes energy and you barely have enough to boil water. Let's take a historical pause in medieval Europe. Quarantine laws began to emerge during waves of plague. The word quarantine itself comes from the Italian quaranta giorni, 40 days. That's how long ships were held in port before passengers could disembark. Cities locked gates, villages put up signs. Travelers were turned away, or worse, fear bred rules, and rules bred silence. You think of the merchant who passed through last month, young with a bright red scarf and too many teeth. He said he was heading west toward the river towns. You wonder if he made it. You wonder if he's the reason for all this. Back home, you close the shutters. You tuck rags into the cracks. You boil more herbs. The same smell fills the air, bitter, earthy, oddly comforting. Your sibling asks, why can't we go outside? You say because someone said so. And for now, that's enough. Later, a knock. Not on your door, on the neighbor's. Voices loud, firm. You peek through a crack in the wood. It's a guard, not from the village, from the Lord's manor. He wears a faded tunic and a dented helmet. He holds a scroll. He says something you can't quite hear. The door opens. There's a short conversation. Then he leaves. You exhale, but not completely. Because now there are footsteps outside again. And this time they stop at your door. Another knock. You don't answer. After a long pause, the steps retreat. You don't sleep that night. Let's end with something peculiar. Some medieval villages used watchmen to patrol during outbreaks, not just for health, but for compliance. They checked doors. They counted gatherings. They even entered homes for safety, and people let them in. Because what choice did they have? Tonight, you barricade the door. Not because you expect danger, but because you expect orders. And you're not sure how many more of those you can follow. You lie still for what feels like hours, your mind playing back the knock, the boots, the unreadable voice outside the door. You didn't imagine it. It was real as the red notice, as real as the graves. Eventually, your sibling speaks. Was that the steward? You shake your head, too well dressed. Did they take anyone? I don't know. A pause. Will they come back? You want to lie. You want to say no. You want to say that the man with the scroll was just checking on the sick, delivering help, maybe food. But you've lived long enough to know that authorities don't knock to give gifts, especially not to people like you. Later that day, you venture out with a bundle of dried beans tucked under your arm. You don't want to trade them. You just want to see what the others are doing, if they're still doing anything. In the square, the well is quiet, still boarded up. A single rat scurries across the stones. You stop near the old fountain where someone has left a basket of wilted greens with a note, take only what you need. You hesitate, then take one. A single leaf. It's bitter, but it tastes like kindness, and you almost cry. Gertrude passes by carrying 2 buckets of water, sloshing slightly over the sides. She nods to you. That stream near the elm is still good, she says. You ask fair. She nods, but worth it. You thank her. She shrugs, keeps walking. No one says be safe anymore. It's assumed, like hunger, like dirt. Back home, you boil the greens with the last of your barley. Your sibling stirs the pot while you sit beside the window, watching for more boots, more scrolls. Nothing comes. That night, you dream of horses, not real ones, royal ones. Tall, white, with braided manes and hooves that don't know the weight of mud. A prince is riding. He waves. You wave back. He throws you bread, and it lands in your lap, still warm. You wake up hungry. Your sibling is already up whispering to someone outside. You freeze until you hear the voice. It's the healer. She enters with a small pouch. Mint, thyme, birch bark, she says. Burn it dry. You open your mouth to ask something, she interrupts. It's not a cure, but it might scare off the worst. You nod. She turns to go, then stops. They're marking houses now, she says. Red paint or straw on the lintel. If you see it, don't go in. You thank her. She pauses again. They're saying the West Road isn't sealed for disease. It's sealed to keep us in. And then she's gone. You don't know what to believe, but you start watching doors more closely. And you start locking yours. At night, you whisper to your sibling stories from before, when your father used to joke about running off to the coast and becoming a fisherman, when your mother taught you how to shape bread into animal faces before baking. Your sibling smiles weakly. Remember the bread turtle, he asks. You laugh. It feels strange. You realize no one has laughed in this village in days. And now you feel the weight of that silence more than anything. The morning begins with weight. Not from rain, not from cold, just weight settled into the air, the walls, the bones. It sits on everything like dust that can't be swept, a quiet heaviness that makes each movement feel half submerged in molasses. You rise slowly, the bed, if it can be called, that releases you without protest. The straw has flattened, given up, molded itself into something that no longer tries to offer comfort. The fire has burned out, but not long ago. There's a faint warmth lingering in the ash, the last echo of heat from yesterday. Outside, the sky is low and colorless. Not gray, not white, just dulled. A kind of sky that feels like it forgot what color was ever for. The village is silent. Not the silence of sleep or even reverence, but the kind that follows too much loss too quickly. A thick silence stitched into the thatched roofs and cracked windows. Even the birds seem reluctant to interrupt it. No bells ring, no carts creak, no doors swing open. Today you need water. You wrap a cloth around your face, not for warmth, not even for health really, just because everyone does now. A habit like breathing shallowly or walking without looking at windows too long. The buckets are lighter when empty, but even they seem reluctant. You sling them across your shoulders and head for the stream beyond the trees. The usual path winds past the chapel, around the well that no one uses anymore, and through the grove where roots rise like bones from the soil. The stream still flows. A ribbon of silver threading its way through the underbrush, ignorant of quarantine and mourning and the weight of days. You crouch beside it, letting your hands break the surface. The cold shocks you back into your body. The water fills the bucket slowly, each drop echoing against the wooden interior like a hollow drum. You watch the ripples chase each other outward. For a moment it's peaceful. But peace is fragile. On the walk back, you notice more signs, more homes marked. Some with red paint on the doorframe, others with straw tied above the lintel, some with both. You don't slow down. You don't need to know who's gone. A pile of ash sits in the square. It wasn't there yesterday. Burnt wood, bits of cloth, maybe a cart, maybe something worse. There's no one guarding it, no one explaining. You pass it without looking. At home, your sibling is waiting crouched near the fire, stirring something in the pot. The smell is thin, mostly steam and boiled greens. You set the buckets down and listen to the way the water shifts. The sound is oddly satisfying, like proof of something done right. You eat in silence. The broth is warm, barely seasoned. There's a sliver of root vegetable in it, tough but real. You chew slowly, savoring the weight of it on your tongue. After the meal, you step outside again. Not far. just to stand under the sky, just to remember that you can. The breeze catches the edge of your cloak. Somewhere a door creaks, but no voices follow. The chapel door is closed now, not even cracked. No smoke from the chimney. The graveyard behind it has grown markers multiplying like weeds, wooden planks lined up like uneven teeth. No names carved yet. Maybe no one left to carve them. You remember when funerals had music? Now the only song is the sound of dirt falling on cloth. Let's pause just briefly for a fact. During waves of plague in the medieval world, villages often marked infected homes with red crosses or straw bundles. Chapel bells were rung not just for the dead, but to drive out illness from the air. Some places banned singing altogether, fearing breath itself could carry the curse. You return inside, light the fire again. The flame flickers uncertainly at first, like it too has doubts about carrying on. Time slips by without much form. There is no work to do, no guests to welcome, no fields to tend. Just maintenance. The fire, the buckets, the breathing. Later you find yourself walking again without intention. Your feet bring you to the edge of the village where the old stone wall crumbles and the road disappears into forest. The path is blocked now. A crude barrier logs mudcloth, strips nailed to beams. Someone scratched a warning into the wood. You don't read it. You already know what it says. You stand there a while, listening. There are birds here, a few, not songbirds, just the rustle of wings, a caw in the distance, a branch shifting under something feathered. And wind. Wind always finds its way through. You remember a time when wind meant spring. Now it carries other things, hints of smoke, whispers of voices that don't quite sound like anyone you know. You return home before dusk. The sky has begun to change color barely, a soft bruise of lavender where the clouds split open. You let the door close gently behind you. The fire still holds. Your sibling is sleeping, curled tight, breathing soft and shallow. You sit near the hearth and wrap your arms around your knees. No candle, no sound. Just the warmth of flame, the scent of boiled sage still clinging to the walls, and the slow tick of your own heartbeat counting out another day survived. Before sleep takes you, you think of buried books again, of sealed roads, of chapel bells gone silent. And you wonder, not for the first time, whether silence is safety or surrender. The sun does rise, you're sure of it. But it doesn't feel like sunrise. The light seeps in, reluctantly filtered through heavy clouds and thicker silence. There's no golden bloom through the shutters, no warmth across the floor. Just a subtle shift from dark to less dark. It's enough to mark the change of day, but not enough to call it morning. You sit up slowly, body aching in familiar ways. Not from illness, just from living. Sleeping on straw, lifting buckets, crouching at fires, your body has learned a quiet, stubborn language made of small pains and endurance. Your sibling is still asleep, curled tightly as if trying to stay smaller than the day ahead. You don't wake him. Instead, you move through the motions. You feed the fire first. Ashes fall away like memory, revealing coals still breathing faintly. A few dry twigs, a careful breath, and the flame returns shy but obedient. You warm your hands over it as if greeting an old friend who never says much but always shows up. There's no breakfast, just a sip of water. Your stomach doesn't complain anymore. It's grown quiet too. Outside, the village looks unchanged, but you've learned stillness can be deceiving. At the far end of the square, a new notice has been nailed to the post. You see it from a distance. The paper is stiff, thick, probably reused from old church records. No seal, no name, just thick ink in sharp lines. You don't go closer. You already know what it says. More rules, fewer rights. Another layer between you and what used to be normal. Instead, you turn toward the fields. They were once green. Now they lie bare, beaten flat by wind and time. Rows of turned earth never seeded. Fence posts lean at odd angles, and here and there a tool has been abandoned, half-buried, rusting, slowly like an apology never delivered. You walk the length of the first row, then the second. You're not looking for anything, just moving. The way a wheel turns without purpose only because it was built to turn. At the edge of the field, you find the scarecrow. It's new. Someone, no one you know, has lashed it together from branches in a faded tunic. Its arms hang unevenly. Its head is a bundle of twine, roughly shaped with two button eyes and no mouth. No birds perch nearby. Something about it makes you shiver. Perhaps it's the way it leans slightly as if listening, or the way its arms seem to shift in the breeze, not flapping, not swinging, just adjusting. You walk past it without turning your back. Further on, the woods begin. You step beneath the canopy cautiously. Trees here are tall, straight, ancient. They don't sway even in wind. Their bark is dark and textured like old hands. The ground is soft, layered with leaves that crumble quietly underfoot. You used to come here for mushrooms. Now you come for silence. Deeper in, you find the stone. You've seen it before, a wide, flat slab near the base of a split oak. It bears no carving, no purpose. But it draws you. Today you sit on it. Feel the cold seep into your bones. Let your breath slow. Above, a single crow flaps by, trailing a sound like torn cloth. Let's pause here for reflection, not interruption. In medieval Europe, forests were often spaces of both exile and refuge. Outlaws fled into them. Healers gathered their herbs from them. Superstitions grew in their shadows. To the villagers, the forest edge marked the boundary of known and unknown, safe and wild. It was not evil, but it was unpredictable. You sit in that unpredictability. And it doesn't frighten you as much as the village does. Because the trees don't ask questions. The trees don't post rules. The trees don't knock at night with scrolls and blank eyes. By the time you return, the light is lower. Not quite evening, but past the noon you never really noticed. You pass the well again, still boarded, still forbidden. Someone has left a small cloth bundle beside it, wrapped tightly, stained faintly red. You don't touch it. At home, the fire greets you like a patient animal. Your sibling is awake now, staring into the hearth, as if trying to read something there. You sit beside him. No words pass between you. You both understand words are fewer now, not just between people, but in the world itself. Books buried, sermons stopped, stories silenced. The only voice left is the wind. That night, you sleep uneasily. Not because of noise, but because of the absence of it. Even the wind seems hesitant. The house creaks only once, and the fire dies without saying goodbye. You dream of nothing. And somehow that frightens you more than dreams of plague or fire. Because dreams, even dark ones, are proof of a mind still working. But a dreamless sleep, that's silence in its purest form. In the quiet that follows, your mind reaches backward. Not to the week before, there's nothing there worth replaying, but further. To a time when the village held music, when voices overlapped in the square without fear, when the bell of the chapel rang for weddings more often than for warnings. You try to summon the sound of that bell now. It doesn't come clearly, just a vague echo, like remembering a song without the words. But in the memory there was light. You were younger. Your mother was planting onions in the garden. Someone nearby was singing a shepherd, maybe. The sheep were restless, the dirt was warm. You remember laughing at something trivial. Not because it was funny, but because there was nothing urgent to suppress it. Now laughter would feel sacrilegious. You press your palm against the worn windowsill and glance outside again. The air is still, not calm, just holding its breath. Across the path, someone is hanging strips of cloth from their doorframe. Gray torn, possibly dyed. The old symbols of warding against sickness. Not official markings, not from the stewards, but folk gestures. Pre-Christian, probably. Gestures that say, stay away, but don't forget we're still human. You wonder how long the cloth will stay there before wind takes it, or rain, or someone in a mask with no patience for superstition. You retreat inside, light a single stub of candle, and open the wooden box near the hearth. Inside are small things: a wooden comb, a cracked thimble, a dry sprig of rosemary, a pebble shaped like an eye. You don't know why you keep them. They're not valuable. They don't bring luck, but they remind you of times when collecting meant something. When hands touched objects not just for survival, but for comfort, for memory, for beauty. You hold the pebble for a while, turning it between your fingers. It's smooth, almost soft from years of wear. You imagine it was once part of a larger stone broken apart by time or accident shaped by water or feet. Now it sits in your palm like a secret. When the candle sputters, you don't relight it. Instead, you lie down on the floor near the fire, closer to warmth, farther from thought. Outside, something moves, not footsteps, just motion, a shape that slips behind the corner of the house and disappears. You don't rise to investigate. There's nothing out there that wants to be found. Not tonight. You close your eyes and try once again to find the sound of that bell. You hear shouting, excited, nervous, possibly accusatory. Someone's yelling near the village center. You shuffle closer, careful not to look too interested. In the Middle Ages, curiosity is often rewarded with responsibility or worse, blame. Still, your feet move. A small crowd has gathered around two women. One points a crooked finger at the other, eyes wide, voice shaking. The other stands silent, face pale. There's a word being repeated low at first, then louder, which. You feel the air shift. Not the wind, but the mood. Tense, electric, like the village is holding its breath, waiting to exhale flames. It doesn't take much to start this kind of fire. A sick cow, a spoiled stew, a dream that didn't come true. Something bad happens, someone wants an explanation, and what better explanation than magic? Witchcraft accusations aren't just about spells and black cats. They're about fear control and often boredom. In communities where the biggest event of the week is that goat that got stuck in a fence, a witch trial is practically theater. Horrifying, yes, but also entertainment. You edge back, suddenly less curious. Let's step aside from the fire pit of social panic for a moment and talk about how witchcraft was viewed in medieval Europe. Contrary to what Hollywood might tell you, not all of medieval society was obsessed with burning witches. In fact, widespread witch hunts didn't explode until the late 15th century and peaked in the 16th and 17th centuries, more early modern than true medieval. But the seeds were planted earlier, and they were watered by suspicion, misfortune, and local gossip networks that ran faster than any horse. Most accusations targeted women, often older, poorer, or living alone. Midwives, herbalists, or just that lady who doesn't come to church enough. You didn't need evidence. You just needed a few neighbors to say they saw you talking to a toad. Trials varied. Some involved long interrogations, others relied on tests, like the infamous swimming trial, where being innocent meant drowning and surviving meant guilt. It's basically a lose-lose scenario, medieval style. Tonight's quirky fact. In some areas, bread and cheese were used as lie detectors. The accused would be given a chunk of each and told to swallow while reciting a holy oath. If they choked, they were guilty. If they didn't choke well, maybe they had dry mouth. Either way, you're eating anxiety on toast. Back in your village, things don't escalate yet. The priest steps in, voice calm but heavy. He reminds the crowd of mercy, of patience. Maybe this isn't the day for a trial. Maybe it's just the day for more rumors. The accused woman walks away, but she doesn't walk lighter. Eyes follow her. Whispers trail behind her like smoke. You know this isn't over. It's just postponed. You return to your home, mind buzzing. You start seeing signs everywhere. A chicken that refuses to lay eggs. A neighbor who suddenly has a limp. Someone sneezing 4 times in a row. It's all suspicious if you're looking hard enough. And that's the danger, isn't it? Once the idea takes hold, everything confirms it. Human brains love patterns, especially when they involve drama. Now here's a question for your sleepy scholar mind. Were medieval witch trials more about justice, religion, or social control? Historians debate this endlessly. Some say it was about reinforcing church authority. Others believe it was the pressure valve for communities under stress. Or maybe it was just the medieval version of pointing fingers when life didn't go your way. Either way, you learned something tonight. Being quiet, obedient, and uninteresting might be the best form of protection. You spend the evening mending clothes by firelight. The shirt you wore to the woods has a tear. You use bone needles and thread made from animal sinew. Your fingers ache, your shoulders sag, but the rhythm is comforting. Stitch, pull, knot. Repeat. Dinner is thin stew again, mostly cabbage and memory. A scrap of meat floats like a reward, and everyone fights politely with eyes to decide who deserves it most. After dinner, you listen as someone tells a story. Not from a book, books are too rare, too sacred, but from memory. It's about a knight, or maybe a monster, or maybe a knight who turns into a monster. The lines blur. That's the point. Storytelling is how your people remember. History lessons, jokes. It's oral Netflix with no rewind button. If you miss a part too bad, you'll hear it again next winter. You notice something in the firelight. The same woman from earlier, the one accused, sits alone at the edge of the room. No one speaks to her. Her bowl is the last to be filled. You look away. You're not brave tonight. You lie down again on your familiar bed of straw. The goats snort. The air smells like onions' feet in faint dread. You close your eyes. Sleep doesn't come quickly. Not because you're not tired, you are, but because your thoughts spin about truth, fear, and how easily people change, how quickly a neighbor becomes a threat, and how lucky you were that no one noticed you talking to that weird toad yesterday. The first thing you notice this morning is that your mouth tastes like you licked a dusty boot. The second thing, one of your teeth is loose. Not wiggle a little loose. Wiggle with a crunch loose. You poke it with your tongue, which is a mistake. It shifts and a sharp pain shoots up through your jaw like lightning with a personal vendetta. You try to ignore it. Pain is as constant here as dirt. But by midday, the side of your face is swollen and someone in the household has noticed you chewing only on one side. A verdict is reached in approximately 4 seconds. The tooth has to go. Now, before you panic, let's walk through medieval dental care. First, there weren't any dentists. There were tooth drawers who could also be blacksmiths, barbers, or traveling peddlers with a strong arm and an even stronger stomach. Pain relief. Possibly a strong drink, a prayer, and biting down on a piece of wood that may or may not have splinters. You're sent to the village tooth puller, who for extra flair operates from a stall at the edge of the market square. He greets you with a gap-toothed smile, which somehow does not inspire confidence. His tools are laid out neatly: iron tongs, a bowl of cloudy water, and a rag that probably had other uses before today. You sit on a low stool. The puller wraps one hand around your head like you're a sack of grain and jams a cold metal hook into your mouth. He tells you to hold still. You are now gripping the stool so tightly your fingernails may leave permanent dents. 1 to 2 pull. Your scream startles a nearby dog. The tooth comes out with a sound that should never be associated with body parts. You spit blood into a bowl and try not to cry. The puller hands you a pinch of salt to pack the socket and charges you a chicken for the trouble. You leave with 1 fewer tooth and several new trust issues. Tonight's disturbing, yet historically accurate fact. People in the Middle Ages believed tooth pain was caused by toothworms, tiny creatures burrowing into the enamel causing rot and agony. Remedies included burning henbane seeds and inhaling the smoke, or using a concoction of herbs and brace yourself urine. Thankfully, you got the iron tongs treatment instead. Back at home, you lie down early, face throbbing. Someone gives you a cloth soaked in vinegar and honey to press to your cheek. It doesn't help, but it does make your face sticky and vaguely salad-scented. You try to distract yourself by listening to conversation. Talk of a wedding, a new baby, and someone who saw a fish with human teeth in the river. You're not sure if that's a metaphor, a dream, or an actual concern. Pain makes time stretch. You drift in and out of a shallow, restless nap until the sky darkens. Dinner is porridge. You try to eat some, but the spoon clinks your empty tooth socket and you nearly jump out of your skin. You mutter something about being fine, then wander outside. The cool air helps. Stars peek through clouds. You sit on a stump cradling your face and breathe deeply. Somewhere in the distance, someone plays a pipe, probably the same juggler from Market Day, now doing an exclusive twilight performance for the nearby sheep. You wonder what happens if more teeth go bad. You've already lost one, and you're only just getting the hang of adulthood. Will you be gumming your turnips by 30? The answer is maybe. Here's something to chew on. Gently archaeological studies of medieval skeletons show high rates of tooth decay and loss, especially among peasants. Diets heavy in grains and lacking in oral hygiene contributed. Some wealthier folks use cloths soaked in vinegar or sage to clean their mouths. You, however, are not wealthy, and your cleaning routine involves hoping for the best. And now a thoughtful pause. Were medieval people less obsessed with appearance because survival took priority? Or did they simply have different standards of beauty that didn't require straight white smiles and hair free of ash? Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe we've just replaced their mud with filters. You go back inside. Your bed of straw is no more forgiving than usual, but you settle into it anyway. The pain has dulled into a steady throb, annoying but no longer screaming. You take that as progress. Sleep comes like a hesitant guest, and as your eyes close, your last thought is oddly comforting. That tooth can't hurt you anymore. You wake up to the smell of smoke, not the cozy, warming kind from a fire, but the acrid kind that makes your eyes water before you're even fully conscious. You bolt upright only to find the house isn't on fire. Someone's just trying to smoke out the fleas again. A pot of pungent herbs, maybe thyme, maybe mystery, is smoldering in the corner. Thick gray fumes curl across the rafters, chasing out bugs, mice, and possibly small demons. You cough once, twice, then bury your face in your shirt until the worst of it clears. This is life with no bug spray, no disinfectant, no deep clean weekends. Your home is an ecosystem. You don't own it. You share it with fleas, lice beetles, spiders, and the occasional stoic rat. You spend the morning itching and thinking about baths, which you haven't had one of in, well, you can't actually remember. Probably before the harvest, or before the pig gave birth, or before that time the village well dried up and you had to walk half a day to fetch water. So definitely a while. Baths in the Middle Ages aren't what most people imagine. There are public bathhouses in cities, yes, but you're in the countryside where bathing happens in tubs only when the weather and mood align, and when nobody needs the water for drinking or washing turnips. Today is laundry day, not for your clothes, those are too stiff with use to bother with. No, it's laundry day for the linens, which means hauling water, heating it, and using lye soap that could strip the skin from a dragon. You offer to help because the alternative is cleaning the pig pen. You choose your battles. The process is tedious. Heat the water, stir in the soap, soak the linen scrub until your arms feel like jelly. Rinse. Wring. Hang them on bushes to dry. Hope it doesn't rain. Hope the goats don't eat them. While you work, someone talks about a cousin who lives near the abbey and heard that monks bathe weekly. Weekly. You all fall silent in awe. Later, you try to wipe the soot from your face and realize the cloth is making it worse. You catch your reflection in a puddle and see a ghost. A very smudged, underfed ghost with wild hair and one less tooth. You shrug. Good enough for today. Let's break for tonight's historical curiosity. Medieval people did care about cleanliness. They just had different ideas about it. In some periods and places, regular bathing was encouraged, especially in bathhouses that also served as social centers. But as time went on, and especially during outbreaks of plague bathing, became viewed with suspicion. People thought water opened the pores and let illness in. Instead, many turned to dry bathing, rubbing the body with cloths, powders, and perfumes to remove grime. Think of it as the ancestor of dry shampoo, but with more rosemary and less success. Speaking of the plague, you hear a cough across the yard, a deep one, the kind that echoes. Everyone freezes. In this time, one cough can clear a room, two can clear a village. Of course, it could just be a cold, or dust, or too much time near the smoky flea pot. But fear is efficient here. News spreads faster than facts, and your neighbor's sneeze becomes someone else's funeral in less than a week. Now, for a quiet academic pondering, did the medieval fear of disease make communities more cautious or more cruel? Were people protecting themselves or just casting out the vulnerable plague pits? Hold answers, but they don't speak. You eat dinner with the usual silence. No one mentions the cough. You pretend not to notice the woman who's not at the table tonight. Maybe she's just tired. Maybe it's something else. You chew your bread slowly, careful not to let it hit the sore spot where your tooth once was. You're getting used to it. That's the medieval secret, you get used to everything. After the meal, a story is told, one you've heard before, but that doesn't matter. It's about a knight who wears white armor and rides a stag into battle. There's a dragon, there's a spell, there's a twist. You let the words wash over you like warm rain, even though you already know how it ends. Outside, the stars are soft and scattered. You step out to breathe. The air smells better tonight. Less smoke, more grass. You take that as a small win. You think about the bath you didn't take, the cough you didn't mention, the tooth that's gone, the woman who's missing the song you heard last week that no one seems to sing anymore. You think about how much changes and how much doesn't. You return to your bed, curl into the scratchy straw, and try not to itch. One more day lived, and in the Middle Ages, that's a kind of victory. Today begins with silence, not the calm, peaceful kind, the heavy, waiting kind. No birds, no chatter. Even the goat seems subdued. Something is in the air. You feel it before you understand it. The village bell rings, once, then twice, then 3 slow, deliberate tolls. Someone has died. No one says it out loud, not yet, but you can tell. You see it in the bowed heads, the quiet footsteps, the way even the children whisper. You don't ask who, you wait for someone to tell you. That's the rule. Eventually, the name comes, the woman from 2 houses over, the one who had been coughing, the one who hadn't come to dinner, the one you thought about last night before sleep folded you under. They say it was a fever, quick, fierce, a sign maybe, or a punishment, or just fate. You help gather sticks for the pyre. There's no church burial. She wasn't baptized in time, so it's fire. Quiet, simple, fast. Ash returns to ash and the sky swallows the smoke. You don't cry, not because you're not sad, but because sadness is expensive here. It slows you down. It makes you forget to tie the gate or to check the coals, so you keep moving. The day carries on. It always does. Animals need feeding. Bread needs baking. Children ask questions you can't answer. And through it all, you wonder, how did people live like this? With death so close so often, was it easier being used to it? Or did it wear them down inch by inch until even joy was too heavy to carry? Here's the strange part: people did find joy. Despite the hardship, the loss, the fleas, the famine, the funerals, people still sang, danced, fell in love, made terrible jokes. You hear one this afternoon about a monk, a chicken, and a missing pair of boots. It makes no sense and still makes everyone laugh. And that's the real secret, isn't it? Life in the Middle Ages wasn't just misery and mud. It was full of noise, of color, of people trying their best with what little they had. You think about the man who juggled fruit in the market, the girl who embroidered stars into her sleeves, the old farmer who claimed his cow was a reincarnated saint. These weren't the dark ages. They were the dim ages lit by firelight, hope, and the stubborn will to keep going. Tonight, you sit by the fire and feel its warmth. It's smaller than yesterday. The wood is damp, but the glow is there, flickering across faces, casting shadows that make everyone look both older and softer. You're handed a bowl of soup. It's thin but warm. You sip it slowly, thinking about nothing in particular. Just the sound of spoons, the crackle of flame, the thrum of life continuing despite it all. Tonight's quirky fact is simple. In some medieval villages, it was common to bury the dead with small items: a comb, a ring, a half-carved spoon. Not for superstition, but as a way of saying, you were here, you mattered. You wonder what someone might bury with you. Probably a tooth. Maybe that chicken you accidentally befriended last spring. One final thought for the night, quiet and unassuming. Did people in the Middle Ages dream of a better world, or did they just dream of surviving the next day? Maybe it doesn't matter. Because today you did both. You wrap yourself in your blanket a little less itchy now, or maybe you've just stopped noticing and lie back. The fire dims. The wind settles. The stars blink above. And sleep finally finds you. As night falls, the quiet deepens. The pyre's smoke has thinned into memory. You stare into the flames of your own hearth, now smaller, more personal. There's no ceremony, no sermon, just warmth. You hear someone softly singing an old song, something about harvest moons and spinning wheels. Their voice cracks halfway through, but no one minds. Maybe that's the charm. Here, perfection isn't required, only presence. You begin mending a pair of socks with a bone needle. The hole is too big, the yarn too rough, but your hands move anyway. Motion helps. It gives shape to grief, even when words can't. A neighbor stops by with half a turnip and a joke about geese in church. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because your body remembers how. The moment passes like fog over the field, brief, soft, gone. The fire hisses, a log shifts. You think again about that woman. How many times you passed her without noticing. How easy it is to forget people until they vanish. But she planted herbs by the road and the mint still grows. That's something. Now for your final curious fact of the night, medieval people marked time not by clocks, but by bells, shadows, and smells when the bread rose, when the pig squealed, when the candle burned halfway down. Life was measured in motion, in moments. Just like this one. So here's your final pondering. Is a hard life less beautiful or just quieter? Maybe it's not about grand things, but small ones. Like the feel of wool on your shoulders, the smell of thyme and soup, the sound of your own breath steady and alive. You lie down again. The straw shifts beneath you. A distant owl calls. You made it. Not gloriously, not perfectly, but wholly, truly, completely. That's enough. The days have become indistinct. You try to count them sometimes, scratching small marks into the wooden beam above your bed. But even that has lost its meaning. Some days are cold, others are colder. That's the extent of your calendar now. Still today feels different, not better, not worse, just hollow in a way that's difficult to explain. The village is unusually quiet, quieter than the usual stillness that hangs over rooftops like damp cloth. You move slowly through your morning, stoking the fire, fetching water, checking the stores of dried herbs and roots. The rhythm soothes you. Even when there's no reward, repetition is its own comfort. The body remembers what the heart forgets. Outside, frost has touched the ground, clinging to the edges of leaves, tracing veins on windows with the delicacy of an artist no one sees. Smoke rises in thinner columns now. There are fewer fires burning, fewer homes occupied. You walk the long path toward the edge of the village, not because you need to, but because sometimes walking forward is the only choice that feels like control. And there it is again, the Field of Gallows. You never called it that before. It was just the hill, the wide clearing with the dead tree in the center, once used for announcements and summer gatherings. Now the shape of the structured timber frame, roughly lashed ropes, a platform hardened with time has changed what you call it. You don't stop, you never do, but your eyes can't help lingering just for a moment on the wood, on the rope, and on the absence of movement. There's nothing to see, really, which makes it worse. In medieval times, gallows weren't just punishment, they were performance. A message to the public, a symbol etched into routine. But here in your village, it's become something quieter. Not spectacle, not justice, just a warning with no clear meaning. You keep walking, down past the stream where the reeds have gone brittle and brown, across the broken fence near the shepherd's house, long abandoned, to the edge of the woods where the old altar stands, a flat rock ringed by stumps half swallowed by ivy and disuse. You sit. It was once a meeting place, a space for blessings, vows, bargains. Now it's yours alone. Above the trees sway whispering things no one can translate. The forest never stops speaking. You just forgot how to listen. In many medieval villages, community justice was public and performative, tied to religious festivals, seasonal rhythms, and collective memory. Gallows weren't hidden. They were placed prominently, symbols of both law and fear. Punishment and penance were often linked, and executioners had a strange place in society, feared avoided, but necessary. You think of this now, sitting on the moss-covered stone, not because someone has been punished, but because punishment here feels ambient, something in the air distributed invisibly like frost. Your eyes drift to the base of the trees. Someone has left something there, bundles of herbs perhaps, or offerings. You don't touch them. There are rules about that, not written, not enforced, but real. Instead, you lean back and close your eyes. You remember stories told in whispers about green spirits in the woods, old gods hiding in shadows, hunters who were hunted in return. You don't believe in them, not exactly, but belief is a luxury now, like warmth or butter or choices. Back home, your sibling is asleep by the hearth. He's thinner, you're thinner, but he still breathes in a steady rhythm, and that today is enough. You drape the last of the wool blankets over him and sit nearby. The fire crackles. The smell of wood smoke clings to your skin. In another life, this might have been a moment of peace, but here it's just a moment. They don't last. You dream that night of the gallows tree. Only this time it has leaves again and birds. And somewhere in the branches a bell is ringing, not in alarm, but in harmony, a soft sound that echoes across empty fields and frozen wells. You wake before it finishes. You rub your eyes, the lingering warmth of the dream still wrapping around you like a phantom blanket. There's an ache in your chest, but it's not pain exactly. More like yearning. You wonder when you last heard a bell ring for joy, not for warning. As you rise, a new chill sets in. It's not from the fire still faintly alive, but from the open gap under the door. Someone has slid a folded note beneath it. A message. You hesitate before picking it up, hands trembling slightly. The writing is hurried, uneven. It warns of a new decree from the Lord. No gatherings, no music, no open trade. The penalty unknown. You read it twice and fold it again with numb fingers. At the window, your reflection looks unfamiliar. Older than it should. Wearier. You brush frost from the glass and stare out across the village. A few lights flicker stubborn against the dim sky. Somewhere a rooster crows late, confused, or simply defiant. You take that as a sign. The days stretch thin now, like wool pulled too far over too many winters. Your feet ache before the sun even rises, but you move anyway. There is no comfort in stillness, only more time to think. And thoughts have grown heavier than hunger. You pull your coat tighter and step into the chill. The snow hasn't come yet, but it promises itself in the wind. The sky's the color of old parchment, and the clouds hang like breath held too long. You make your way toward the old barn, not for animals which are long gone, but for the grain storage beneath it. The cellar smells of earth and regret. Wooden bins that once overflowed now cradle dust. You scrape together what little remains, a handful of dried peas, a scattering of oats, and tuck them into your satchel. It won't be enough, but you tell yourself it might be. Lies in small doses are sometimes more nutritious than food. On your way back, you pass the village well. It's frozen over now, a thin film of ice making the rope creak as it sways in the wind. A bucket still hangs there mid-lift, abandoned by someone too tired to finish the task, or too scared. You pause just for a moment and look down into the dark circle. Medieval wells were more than sources of water. They were social centers, rumor exchanges, stages for whispers, and sometimes silent graves. You shiver, but not from the cold. The village is quieter than usual. A door stands open 3 houses down, swaying in rhythm with the breeze. No one moves to shut it. No one comes or goes. You think of the family who lived there. A mother with a limp, 2 sons who never smiled. Inside your home, the hearth has gone dim. You kneel and breathe into the embers, coaxing life from ashes. Flames catch slowly, as if reluctant to return. Your brother stirs from the corner. He watches you with eyes too old for his face. You hand him a crust of bread without speaking. He eats slowly, chewing each bite as if it were a story that needed remembering. You watch in silence, counting the bites, measuring hope. Later, you mend one of the windows with scraps of linen and leftover pitch. The wind still finds its way through, but you pretend it doesn't. Pretending is useful. It fills the gaps between what you know and what you wish. You remember that in many medieval homes, windows were rare. Glass was expensive. Most openings were covered in cloth-oiled paper or nothing at all. Winter lived indoors as much as out. Fires were sacred, and smoke stains on the ceiling told stories of endurance. You step outside as the light fades. The village feels like a painting that someone forgot to finish. Half shadow, no depth. A blur of gray and tired outlines. You walk without a destination, letting the cold bite through layers until your skin feels honest. Behind the smithy, you find a trail of footprints leading toward the woods. Small ones. A child. You follow them without thought. The snow here is patchy but crisp, preserving steps like pressed flowers. The trail ends at the tree line. No child, no sound. Just the sway of branches and the creak of memory. You know better than to enter the forest at dusk, but something about the silence draws you forward. Just a few steps. Beneath the trees, the air changes. Thicker, older, The smell of moss and damp bark wraps around you. The trees here are different, twisted, not broken, alive in ways that feel aware. You find a doll tied to a low branch. Its face is crudely sewn, its body stuffed with hay and lavender. Protection or warning. In medieval times, such figures were used in folk rituals. Some warded off illness, others cursed enemies, some just kept children quiet at night. You leave the doll untouched. It belongs here more than you do. On the way back, the light has nearly gone. Your brother is waiting by the door. He doesn't ask where you've been. You don't tell him. In silence, you eat the last of the peas. That night, you dream of the well again, but this time it speaks. A low voice, slow and wet, echoing from the bottom. It doesn't threaten, it remembers names, faces, choices. You wake before dawn, heart pounding. Outside, a thin dusting of snow begins to fall. It covers the roof, the path of footprints. By morning, everything will look clean, but you will remember where you walked. Snow came in the night, not in flurries or gusts, but with a steady patience, like a secret being kept by the sky. By morning, the village lies hushed under a white quilt. Every rooftop softened, every pathway erased. You wake to silence so dense it seems to press against your skin. Your brother sleeps a small bundle under the thinning blanket. You add one more log to the fire, watching it hiss and protest before catching. The room warms slowly. You wrap yourself in your coat, already stiff from yesterday's cold, and step outside. The cold greets you like something sentient, curious, indifferent. Your boots crunch into snow that feels untouched by anything living. You walk through the village, though there's nowhere you need to go. Each step marks your presence in a world that seems to have forgotten people exist. The baker's chimney doesn't smoke. The chapel bell hasn't rung in weeks. Doors remain shut, windows fogged over. You are alone with the snow and the sound of your own breath. At the village well, you pause. A thin crust of ice seals the surface. Someone has broken it recently. A wooden bucket rests at the edge, half filled and already beginning to frost over. You dip a finger in and wince. Even the water feels ancient. Medieval wells were more than water sources. They were places where news-spread eyes watched whispers settled like dust. You remember sitting here in warmer seasons, listening to stories while feet swung over the stone rim. That feels like another life. You follow the edge of the square boots, tracing curves around buried carts and forgotten tools. Then your eyes fall on the chapel ruins. You make your way there. The chapel still has 3 walls. The 4th crumbled last winter. Snow has found its way in, draping the broken altar in lace. Someone, likely old Mila, has placed a bundle of dried rosemary on the stones. You kneel, brushing off a small patch, exposing the carvings beneath. The symbol is faint but familiar, a looped cross, part of the old prayers. You trace it with your glove, not for faith, just for memory. You linger for a while, watching the snow drift through the broken roof. It spins in lazy spirals, catching light that barely filters through the gray sky. It's peaceful in a way you can't name, as if even the snow knows this is a place meant for remembering. On your way back, you spot footprints smaller than yours leading toward the woods. They veer from the path and disappear into the trees. A child, a visitor. You hesitate. The snow is fresh. These are new. You follow them for a few steps, just far enough to see a doll tied to a low branch. It's made of twigs and yarn with eyes of dark wax. Protective magic or simple comfort. In medieval villages, charms like this served both purposes. You don't touch it. Instead, you turn back. The world feels more watched than empty now. Back at home, your brother is awake, toying with a bundle of string and bits of wood. Making a friend, he says, not looking up. You nod. You understand. In a place like this, imagination becomes survival. You melt snow in a pot, adding half an onion and some dried peas. The broth is thin but warm. He eats slowly, as if memorizing each spoonful. You save a little for later, just in case. Later that afternoon, Mila appears. She doesn't speak, just hands you a tin of salt, accepts a share of your soup, and vanishes. It's not bartering, it's acknowledgement. After she leaves, you find yourself standing by the door longer than usual, watching the sky dim, watching snow drift sideways, listening for a sound that doesn't come. You light a second candle, even though it feels extravagant. The glow softens the shadows and makes your brother's face look younger. He hums a lullaby, one from your childhood, though the words are long gone. You close your eyes and listen. Sometimes a sound can carry more warmth than flame. Outside, a tree branch taps against the window. Then again. You open the door. Nothing but white air and stillness. But you whisper thank you anyway to the snow, the silence, the space that holds you without answer. You leave the door open for just a second longer, letting the cold creep in, letting the night know you're still here. Morning begins not with light, but with a draft. A quiet breath of wind slips through the roof beam above your bed, brushing your cheek like an old memory. You open your eyes slowly. The fire has died, and the room is the kind of cold that sits inside your bones before you even move. Your brother is still asleep, arms folded under his chin, his breath shallow but steady. You pull your coat tighter and step outside, boots finding the frozen grooves left from yesterday. Snowflakes drift lazily through the air, soft as sighs. In the stillness, your ears catch something unexpected, a soft scraping sound. You pause, eyes scanning the village. There, near the edge of the chapel, ruins a figure stoops low, bundled in dark wool, dragging a sled. You approach cautiously. It's Ivar, the woodcutter's son, hauling branches. His face is red with cold and his hands tremble, but he nods to you. "Storm's coming," he mutters, barely audible. You help him without question, loading more limbs onto the sled. Words are sparse, but presence is enough. Later, the village gathers. Not for ceremony, those are rare now, but for need. The old meeting hall smells of damp wood and melting snow. People bring what little they have, root vegetables, wax scraps, dried herbs. You contribute your last bit of smoked meat. No one complains. No one speaks more than they must. Yet something passes between everyone, an understanding, a shared endurance. In the Middle Ages, villages relied on these unspoken threads woven from hardship and habit. You return home with a pouch of barley and a small beeswax candle. It feels like treasure. Your brother lights the candle with care, watching it flicker like it holds some secret warmth. You spend the afternoon sewing. The sleeve of your brother's coat is frayed and your fingers are stiff, but the rhythm is soothing. Stitch, not tug, over and over. You remember your mother teaching you this, how she hummed when she worked, her voice soft as linen. Outside, the snow thickens. Trees vanish into the white. You listen for the wind's change, for that subtle shift that says the sky is about to speak in earnest. You've lived through enough winters to recognize its warning. By nightfall, the storm has arrived. It comes not with fury, but with weight. The roof creaks under its burden. The windows blur with frost. Inside, you huddle near the fire, your brother beside you, holding the doll he made yesterday. You begin to tell a story. Not one you know well, but one you build as you speak. A tale of a child who follows a star into the forest, who meets creatures carved from snow, who finds a warmth hidden beneath the earth. Your brother listens, eyes wide, not interrupting. You embellish details, letting your voice rise and fall like wind through pines. It's a strange comfort, this improvisation. In medieval homes, stories weren't just entertainment. They were survival, a way to mark time, to push back the dark. When you pause, your brother asks if the child returns home. You consider the question. No, you say softly, but he finds what he was looking for. He nods. That's enough. Later, after he's asleep, you stare into the fire. The embers pulse like distant stars. You think about how many winters have passed like this. How many more might come? You remember something you read once, that medieval people believed the soul could grow stronger in winter. That the quiet and the cold stripped away the world's noise, letting truth ring clearer. You don't know if that's true, but tonight in the hush between gusts, you believe it might be. Morning begins not with light, but with a draft. A quiet breath of wind slips through the roof beam above your bed, brushing your cheek like an old memory. You open your eyes slowly. The fire has died, and the room is the kind of cold that sits inside your bones before you even move. Your brother lies beside you, wrapped in layers that hardly help. His lips are chapped, eyes fluttering beneath closed lids. You move carefully, not to wake him. The floor is cold against your soles. You add wood to the hearth, your fingers stiff. The flint takes longer to strike today. When the flame catches, it feels like a small triumph. You cradle your hands near it, letting the tingling pain of heat return. Then you rise and open the shutters. The outside is strange. The snow has stopped, but now frost feathers the inside of the glass. The world beyond the pane is faded blurred at the edges as if the village were slowly being erased from memory. The fog clings low and wide. It doesn't move. It waits. You gather a pot of melted snow for boiling. Today's breakfast is broth again, onion skins, dry barley, and a shaving of salted meat. It barely colors the water. Your brother stirs when the warmth touches his face. I dreamed about the girl, he says, his voice rasped by sleep. The one with the branch hair. You pause. You want to say she isn't real. But then again, who is in times like this? As he eats slowly, reverently, you notice he's drawn more spirals in the soot beside the hearth. Some overlap, some tilt, one loops endlessly into itself. You don't ask, you just note it in silence. After breakfast, you bundle yourselves. The fog is still thick, but staying indoors feels worse. The air outside is heavy with moisture, but there's something clearer about it, like breath exhaled after a long secret. You walk the edge of the village. Houses disappear behind you. Shapes warp. The well appears, then vanishes in mist. When you reach the square, you find a new sign, twigs stacked in a cross pattern, on the chapel door, bound by red thread. This wasn't here yesterday. Your brother doesn't speak, but he walks forward and touches the thread. His fingers are bare, and when he draws back, you expect to see blood. There is none, just a smear of wax. In medieval times, wax was sometimes mixed with herbs and pressed into charms. These were left at churches or crossroads to ask for protection or forgiveness. The red thread might mean danger, or love, or nothing at all. You push open the chapel door. It groans like something reluctant. The interior remains the same snow-draped altar, faint light from the broken roof. But something new sits on the stone ledge near the back wall. A small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, dried rosemary, a rusted coin, and what looks like a braid of dark hair. Human maybe. You don't touch it. You feel watched again. Not threatened, just noted. On your way home, your brother picks up a feather from the snow. It's black and glossy, curved like a question mark. It's from her, he says. You nod. By midday, the fog finally lifts. For a moment, the sun breaks through, weak and white. You see the full outline of the village again, the way the snow dips over collapsed carts, how the well has cracked at one edge, how every home wears frost like lace. You check the pantry again. One candle left. Enough flour for a thin loaf. The salt tin Mila brought still sits unopened. You save it. You save everything now. Your brother builds a figure from bits of charcoal and hay. He ties string around its waist and sets it near the fire. It needs a name, he says. You hesitate, then answer, let's ask it. That night, the wind picks up. The trees outside creak like old bones. Snow begins to fall again, soft at first, then steadier. It doesn't swirl, it descends. You can't sleep. The figure your brother made now casts a long shadow against the wall. It almost seems to breathe with the flame. Your mind drifts to old stories, of midwinter spirits, of women in cloaks of bark, of children who wandered into the woods and returned speaking languages no one knew. You remember something your grandmother once said, not all visitors knock. Some come in with the smoke. You whisper a lullaby under your breath. Your brother hums along, eyes already closed. The figure leans slightly forward as if listening. Morning begins not with light, but with a draft. A quiet breath of wind slips through the roof beam above your bed, brushing your cheek like an old memory. You open your eyes slowly. The fire has died, and the room is the kind of cold that sits inside your bones before you even move. Your brother lies beside you, wrapped in layers that hardly help. His lips are chapped eyes fluttering beneath closed lids. You move carefully not to wake him. The floor is cold against your soles. You add wood to the hearth, your fingers stiff. The flint takes longer to strike today. When the flame catches, it feels like a small triumph. You cradle your hands near it, letting the tingling pain of heat return. Then you rise and open the shutters. The outside is strange. The snow has stopped, but now frost feathers the inside of the glass. The world beyond the pane is faded, blurred at the edges, as if the village were slowly being erased from memory. The fog clings low and wide. It doesn't move. It waits. You gather a pot of melted snow for boiling. Today's breakfast is broth again, onion skins, dry barley, and a shaving of salted meat. It barely colors the water. Your brother stirs when the warmth touches his face. I dreamed about the girl, he says, his voice rasped by sleep. The one with the branch hair. You pause. You want to say she isn't real. But then again, who is in times like this? As he eats slowly, reverently, you notice he's drawn more spirals in the soot beside the hearth. Some overlap, some tilt. One loops endlessly into itself. You don't ask, you just note it in silence. After breakfast, you bundle yourselves. The fog is still thick, but staying indoors feels worse. The air outside is heavy with moisture, but there's something clearer about it, like breath exhaled after a long secret. You walk the edge of the village. Houses disappear behind you. Shapes warp. The well appears, then vanishes in mist. When you reach the square, you find a new sign, twigs, stacked in a cross pattern on the chapel door, bound by red thread. This wasn't here yesterday. Your brother doesn't speak, but he walks forward and touches the thread. His fingers are bare, and when he draws back, you expect to see blood. There is none, just a smear of wax. In medieval times, wax was sometimes mixed with herbs and pressed into charms. These were left at churches or crossroads to ask for protection or forgiveness. The red thread might mean danger, or love, or nothing at all. You push open the chapel door. It groans like something reluctant. The interior remains the same snow-draped altar, faint light from the broken roof. But something new sits on the stone ledge near the back wall. A small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, dried rosemary, a rusted coin, and what looks like a braid of dark hair. Human maybe, you don't touch it. You feel watched again, not threatened, just noted. On your way home, your brother picks up a feather from the snow. It's black and glossy, curved like a question mark. It's from her, he says. You nod. By midday, the fog finally lifts. For a moment, the sun breaks through, weak and white. You see the full outline of the village again, the way the snow dips over collapsed carts, how the well has cracked at one edge, how every home wears frost like lace. You check the pantry again. One candle left, enough flour for a thin loaf. The salt tin Mila brought still sits unopened. You save it. You save everything now. Your brother builds a figure from bits of charcoal and hay. He ties string around its waist and sets it near the fire. It needs a name, he says. You hesitate, then answer, let's ask it. That night the wind picks up. The trees outside creak like old bones. Snow begins to fall again, soft at first, then steadier. It doesn't swirl, it descends. You can't sleep. The figure your brother made now casts a long shadow against the wall, and it almost seems to breathe with the flame. Your mind drifts to old stories, of midwinter spirits, of women in cloaks of bark, of children who wandered into the woods and returned speaking languages no one knew. You remember something your grandmother once said, not all visitors knock. Some come in with the smoke. You whisper a lullaby under your breath. Your brother hums along, eyes already closed. The figure leans slightly forward as if listening. There's no harp music, no slow motion glances across a crowded market, no stolen kisses in the hayloft while violins swell in the background. In medieval life, love rarely gets a vote. You're 14, maybe 15, old enough for marriage by everyone else's standard, but your own. You wake one day to find that your parents have arranged your future while you were still dreaming about butter on bread. Your father nods toward the baker's son, not the charming one, the other one with the soft cough and the wandering eye. A good match, he says. Solid family. Good flour. You try to argue. You mention dreams. You talk of kindness. Your mother hushes you with a look that says, dreams don't bake bread. In medieval Europe, marriage wasn't about romance. It was economic survival and alliance. You weren't picking a partner. You were joining 2 harvest cycles, 2 dowries, 2 last names if you were lucky to have one. You walk past the baker's shop each morning now. He waves. His smile is crooked. Not bad, not good, just assigned. You wave back. Your stomach knots like twine. One afternoon, your friend whispers about a girl from the next village who ran away with a traveling piper. They caught her, she says, eyes wide, made her scrub chamber pots for the abbey. You nod solemnly, but part of you wonders if the girl thinks it was worth it. Your brother teases you. He hums wedding songs under his breath. At supper, your mother mentions nice colors for your dress. You stare at your bowl. Barley again. You wonder if weddings come with meat. The priest arrives to bless the match. He smells like ashes and speaks like a crow. A union forged in duty lasts longer than one forged in lust, he declares. You try to listen, you try to care, but his words feel like a cold stone tied to your chest. On the day of your betrothal, the whole village gathers. There's music rough and loud. Children toss dried petals. Someone shouts your name with a grin. You smile back because that's the only choice you get today. You sit beside the baker's son. He picks at his nails. You pick at your dress. Your hands don't touch. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You glance at his profile. He has kind eyes, or maybe tired ones. Hard to tell. Later that night, you lie awake. Your future feels like a shirt that doesn't fit, but one you're not allowed to take off. The walls of your home creak with wind. Somewhere a dog barks and someone laughs. In another time, in another place, this might be a story of rebellion. But here now it's a story of settling, of learning to love a stranger because there's nothing else to do. Weeks pass. You learn he likes singing while he bakes. Off-key but enthusiastic, he sneaks you crusts with honey. Once he mends a tear in your sleeve without a word. You watch him from the doorway. You don't smile, but you don't frown either. One morning you find a bundle of dried flowers tucked into your shoe. No note, just gesture. You leave a plum on his shelf. This is what courtship becomes, quiet sideways shaped by necessity. Your friend visits and asks, do you love him yet? You shrug. He doesn't snore, you say. She laughs, and that's enough. In time, love might come, or it might not. The medieval world doesn't wait for emotions. It builds life like walls, one stone at a time, without asking how you feel about each brick. You watch other girls be betrothed. Some cry, some grin. Some seem absent, like their minds have already floated away to some other life. You wonder which one you look like. At the chapel, during a feast day, you sit beside him again. He hands you a piece of apple pie, apple, real sugar. You break it in half and give him the larger piece. He doesn't thank you. He just eats it slowly as if the gesture itself has weight. He tells you quietly that he once wanted to be a monk. Too many rules, he says, then chuckles. It's the first time you've heard him laugh. It sounds like dry leaves rustling, not quite joyful, but warm. You don't tell him your dreams. Not yet. You don't know if they'll survive being said aloud, but you think about telling him, and that's something. Love in the medieval world isn't grand. It's not wild declarations or star-crossed fates. It's survival. It's tolerance blooming into affection. It's two people finding warmth where there wasn't any. Your wedding will come, with bread ale, maybe music. You'll wear a dress sewn from your mother's old shift. The baker's son will look nervous. So will you. But when he holds out his hand, you'll take it. Not because you're swept away, but because you're still here. And somehow that will be enough. It doesn't start with horns or banners. War in your world arrives quieter than stories suggest. One day a horse gallops through the village square. A parchment is nailed to the chapel door. A seal, a name, a call to arms. Most can't read it, but they know what it means. They've seen this before. Your father's face goes pale. He doesn't speak, just stares at the parchment like it might catch fire. By evening, men gather near the well. They talk in low voices. The word conscription is said like a curse spat into the snow. You are told to prepare, not to go but to lose. A brother, a cousin, a friend. War doesn't ask, it collects. The village blacksmith works late into the night, not for money, for the duty of forging. Spears from farming tools, helmets from pot lids, a breastplate once part of a gate. Nothing fits, everything rattles. The next morning a soldier arrives. Not a knight, just a man in boots and worn leather eyes like chipped stone. He calls names. Your brother's name is on the list. He's 17, still scared of goats, but he nods and says nothing. That night you help him pack. A crust of bread, a flask, a charm from your mother. He carves his initials into the haft of a wooden stick and calls it a sword. You don't cry, neither does he. When dawn breaks, a cart waits. Men climb in. Your brother turns once, gives a weak smile, and vanishes down the road like a borrowed shadow. War in the Middle Ages was a cycle lords claiming land kings, testing borders, peasants paying the cost. Your village will not see a map change, but it will see fewer footsteps, emptier benches, silence. At first, nothing changes. Crops still grow, rain still falls, but the laughter is thinner. Songs trail off. The world feels like it's bracing for something. Messages come rarely. Scrawled notes passed by traders saying who still lives, who doesn't. You scan each one, your heart like a coiled rope. Weeks stretch into months. One day a group returns. Not all of them. Fewer than left. They carry new scars and old eyes. Your brother isn't with them. They shake their heads. Didn't see him. That's all. You plant potatoes that spring like he would have. You hum his tunes while you work. The earth takes your footsteps the same way it took his. Your neighbor's son comes back with a limp and a medal. No one knows what the medal means, but they nod as if it helps. He speaks little, mostly stares. At night he screams. His mother pretends not to hear. War doesn't just kill, it changes the shape of people. A few years later, another parchment is nailed to the chapel. Another name, another call, another cycle. Children grow up knowing they will one day leave with a stick carved into a sword. No one calls it heroism. No one calls it just. They just call it again. And still the fields need sowing, the roofs need patching. Life doesn't wait for peace. You keep your brother's stick in the corner. It splintered last year, but you tied it with twine. You keep it anyway. It smells like smoke and old memories. You sometimes hold it when it rains. When someone new asks if you ever knew someone who went to war, you say yes and leave it there. Because here war doesn't end, it just rests between rounds. There's no harp music, no slow motion glances across a crowded market, no stolen kisses in the hayloft while violins swell in the background. In medieval life, love rarely gets a vote. You're 14, maybe 15, old enough for marriage by everyone else's standard, but your own. You wake one day to find that your parents have arranged your future while you were still dreaming about butter on bread. Your father nods toward the baker's son, not the charming one, the other one with the soft cough and the wandering eye. A good match, he says. Solid family, good flour. You try to argue, you mention dreams, you talk of kindness. Your mother hushes you with a look that says, dreams don't bake bread. In medieval Europe, marriage wasn't about romance. It was economic survival and alliance. You weren't picking a partner. You were joining 2 harvest cycles, 2 dowries, 2 last names if you were lucky to have one. You walk past the baker's shop each morning now. He waves, his smile is crooked. Not bad, not good, just assigned. You wave back. Your stomach knots like twine. One afternoon, your friend whispers about a girl from the next village who ran away with a traveling piper. They caught her, she says, eyes wide. Made her scrub chamber pots for the abbey. You nod solemnly, but part of you wonders if the girl thinks it was worth it. Your brother teases you. He hums wedding songs under his breath. At supper, your mother mentions nice colors for your dress. You stare at your bowl. Barley again. You wonder if weddings come with meat. The priest arrives to bless the match. He smells like ashes and speaks like a crow. A union forged in duty lasts longer than one forged in lust, he declares. You try to listen. You try to care. But his words feel like a cold stone tied to your chest. On the day of your betrothal, the whole village gathers. There's music rough and loud. Children toss dried petals. Someone shouts your name with a grin. You smile back because that's the only choice you get today. You sit beside the baker's son. He picks at his nails. You pick at your dress. Your hands don't touch. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You glance at his profile. He has kind eyes, or maybe tired ones. Hard to tell. Later that night, you lie awake. Your future feels like a shirt that doesn't fit, but one you're not allowed to take off. The walls of your home creak with wind. Somewhere a dog barks and someone laughs. In another time, in another place, this might be a story of rebellion. But here now it's a story of settling, of learning to love a stranger because there's nothing else to do. Weeks pass. You learn he likes singing while he bakes. Off-key but enthusiastic. He sneaks you crust with honey. Once he mends a tear in your sleeve without a word. You watch him from the doorway. You don't smile, but you don't frown either. One morning you find a bundle of dried flowers tucked into your shoe. No note, just gesture. You leave a plum on his shelf. This is what courtship becomes: quiet, sideways, shaped by necessity. Your friend visits and asks, do you love him yet? You shrug. He doesn't snore, you say. She laughs, and that's enough. In time, love might come, or it might not. The medieval world doesn't wait for emotions. It builds life like walls, one stone at a time, without asking how you feel about each brick. You watch other girls be betrothed. Some cry, some grin. Some seem absent, like their minds have already floated away to some other life. You wonder which one you look like. At the chapel during a feast day, you sit beside him again. He hands you a piece of apple pie, real apple, real sugar. You break it in half and give him the larger piece. He doesn't thank you. He just eats it slowly, as if the gesture itself has weight. He tells you quietly that he once wanted to be a monk. Too many rules, he says, then chuckles. It's the first time you've heard him laugh. It sounds like dry leaves rustling, not quite joyful, but warm. You don't tell him your dreams, not yet. You don't know if they'll survive being said aloud, but you think about telling him, and that's something. Love in the medieval world isn't grand. It's not wild declarations or star-crossed fates. It's survival. It's tolerance blooming into affection. It's two people finding warmth where there wasn't any. Your wedding will come. With bread ale, maybe music. You'll wear a dress sewn from your mother's old shift. The baker's son will look nervous. So will you. But when he holds out his hand, you'll take it. Not because you're swept away, but because you're still here. And somehow that will be enough. Fear isn't a spike in the night, it's the breath you hold all day. It's the hush behind laughter, the way no one touches the door with their palm anymore. Fear in your village is now a neighbor, a guest at every meal, a silent companion when the fire dims. You wake before the sun. It's habit now. You listen, not for roosters, but for coughing, for that wet, dragging sound that doesn't come from hay or cold. The cottage next door has been quiet for 2 mornings. That's either good or very bad. Your mother lights the hearth with trembling hands. She murmurs prayers that once were said in joy, now they sound like apologies. She ties rosemary at the window and burns sage in the corner. It's not medicine, but it's all you've got. She says smoke keeps away death, so you let the room fill. The baker didn't open today. Yesterday, his son was pale. The day before that, he stumbled outside with a red nose and shaking knees. Now the shutters are drawn, and no scent of bread wafts through the square. You chew old crusts and say nothing. You fetch water early. The well is quiet. A new sign's been posted above it: boil twice. Don't linger. You obey. Everyone obeys now. In your childhood, fear had names: wolves, witches, bandits. Now it has none. It's just called it, or the gray breath, or the cloud, as if a real name might summon it faster. You pass a small figure on the road, a girl from 3 cottages down. She's clutching a linen-wrapped bundle. Maybe it's herbs, maybe her cat, maybe her brother's ashes. You don't ask. She doesn't speak. Ashes are everywhere now. People burn more than they bury. The graveyard is full. The priest has taken to marking trees with names. They'll grow together, he says. You nod like you believe it. When the healer died, it felt like a star had gone out. She was the one who knew which root soothed the lungs, which leaf lowered fever. Now her hut is locked, her cat's gone feral. You think about breaking in, but superstition stops you. Superstition is law these days. People wear garlic strings like armor. Some keep an egg under their bed. Others draw protective circles in the dirt outside their doors. You don't know if it works, but you do all of it. Evening brings wind, the kind that sounds like whispers if you're too tired. You huddle with your family near the fire, every cough now suspect. Your brother sneezes and 5 heads turn. At night you dream of running through fields that used to hold wheat but now hold no one. Or you dream of feasts, golden bread, fatty lamb laughter. Then you wake to the sound of shovels. One family tried to flee, took a cart and left at dusk. By dawn the wheels were found snapped near the river. Some say it was bandits. Others say the sickness doesn't like cowards. But fear isn't always cruel. Sometimes it teaches gentleness. You see neighbors leaving jars of broth on doorsteps. You see children drawing hearts in the snow. One boy built a snowman with a rosemary crown. It stood 2 days before melting, watching over the village like a cold guardian. You try to help where you can. You gather pine resin for medicine. You boil bark for teas. Once you found wild thyme and gave it to an old man whose lungs were failing. He lasted a week longer. It felt like a triumph. The quiet is heaviest near the chapel. Bells no longer ring. Doors remain barred. But someone each week leaves a sprig of lavender by the threshold. You think it might be the widow who lost her sons, or the boy who stopped speaking. Whoever it is, you leave sage next to theirs. You count days by candle stubs. When one lasts longer than expected, you whisper thanks to no one in particular. Gratitude has become its own ritual. You thank the fire for warmth, the roof for not leaking, your skin for still holding you together. One morning the coughing stops, not everywhere but enough to notice. Your neighbor steps outside, face thin but alive. She nods. That's enough. You nod back. The air feels thinner, or maybe you've forgotten how to breathe deep. Still you try. You open the shutters, let in light you almost forgot existed. Children return to the paths, quiet at first, then louder. A stone game appears again by the well. Someone laughs. You don't recognize the voice, but it feels like an old song. You do not celebrate, not yet. The fear still lives in the corners, but it no longer rules the center. You sew a new tunic, a foolish thing maybe, but the stitches feel like control. You choose green. Green is for spring. That night, as the wind howls past, you place rosemary in your pillow and sleep without dreams. Just warmth, just breath, just the silence of survival. The morning begins with weight. Not from rain, not from cold, just weight settled into the air, the walls, the bones. It sits on everything like dust that can't be swept, a quiet heaviness that makes each movement feel half submerged in molasses. You rise slowly, the bed, if it can be called, that releases you without protest. The straw has flattened, given up, molded itself into something that no longer tries to offer comfort. The fire has burned out, but not long ago. There's a faint warmth lingering in the ash, the last echo of heat from yesterday. Outside, the sky is low and colorless. Not gray, not white, just dulled. A kind of sky that feels like it forgot what color was ever for. The village is silent. Not the silence of sleep or even reverence, but the kind that follows too much loss too quickly. A thick silence stitched into the thatched roofs and cracked windows. Even the birds seem reluctant to interrupt it. No bells ring, no carts creak, no doors swing open. Today you need water. You wrap a cloth around your face, not for warmth, not even for health really, just because everyone does now. A habit like breathing shallowly or walking without looking at windows too long. The buckets are lighter when empty, but even they seem reluctant. You sling them across your shoulders and head for the stream beyond the trees. The usual path winds past the chapel, around the well that no one uses anymore, and through the grove where roots rise like bones from the soil. The stream still flows. A ribbon of silver threading its way through the underbrush, ignorant of quarantine and mourning and the weight of days. You crouch beside it, letting your hands break the surface. The cold shocks you back into your body. The water fills the bucket slowly, each drop echoing against the wooden interior like a hollow drum. You watch the ripples chase each other outward. For a moment it's peaceful. But peace is fragile. On the walk back, you notice more signs, more homes marked. Some with red paint on the doorframe, others with straw tied above the lintel, some with both. You don't slow down. You don't need to know who's gone. A pile of ash sits in the square. It wasn't there yesterday. Burnt wood, bits of cloth. Maybe a cart. Maybe something worse. There's no one guarding it. No one explaining. You pass it without looking. At home, your sibling is waiting crouched near the fire, stirring something in the pot. The smell is thin, mostly steam and boiled greens. You set the buckets down and listen to the way the water shifts. The sound is oddly satisfying, like proof of something done right. You eat in silence. The broth is warm, barely seasoned. There's a sliver of root vegetable in it, tough but real. You chew slowly, savoring the weight of it on your tongue. After the meal, you step outside again. Not far, just to stand under the sky, just to remember that you can. The breeze catches the edge of your cloak. Somewhere a door creaks, but no voices follow. The chapel door is closed now, not even cracked. No smoke from the chimney. The graveyard behind it has grown markers multiplying like weeds, wooden planks lined up like uneven teeth. No names carved yet. Maybe no one left to carve them. You remember when funerals had music. Now the only song is the sound of dirt falling on cloth. Let's pause just briefly for a fact. During waves of plague, in the medieval world, villages often marked infected homes with red crosses or straw bundles. Chapel bells were rung not just for the dead, but to drive out illness from the air. Some places banned singing altogether, fearing breath itself could carry the curse. You return inside, light the fire again. The flame flickers uncertainly at first, like it too has doubts about carrying on. Time slips by without much form. There is no work to do, no guests to welcome, no fields to tend. Just maintenance. The fire, the buckets, the breathing. Later, you find yourself walking again without intention. Your feet bring you to the edge of the village where the old stone wall crumbles and the road disappears into forest. The path is blocked now. A crude barrier logs mudcloth, strips nailed to beams. Someone scratched a warning into the wood. You don't read it. You already know what it says. You stand there a while, listening. There are birds here, a few. Not songbirds, just the rustle of wings, a call in the distance, a branch shifting under something feathered. And wind. Wind always finds its way through. You remember a time when wind meant spring. Now it carries other things. Hints of smoke, whispers of voices that don't quite sound like anyone you know. You return home before dusk. The sky has begun to change color barely. A soft bruise of lavender where the clouds split open. You let the door close gently behind you. The fire still holds. Your sibling is sleeping, curled tight, breathing soft and shallow. You sit near the hearth and wrap your arms around your knees. No candle, no sound. Just the warmth of flame, the scent of boiled sage still clinging to the walls, and the slow tick of your own heartbeat counting out another day survived. Before sleep takes you, you think of buried books again, of sealed roads, of chapel bells gone silent. And you wonder not for the first time whether silence is safety or surrender. You hear shouting, excited, nervous, possibly accusatory. Someone's yelling near the village center. You shuffle closer, careful not to look too interested. In the Middle Ages, curiosity is often rewarded with responsibility or worse, blame. Still, your feet move. A small crowd has gathered around two women. One points a crooked finger at the other, eyes wide, voice shaking. The other stands silent, face pale. There's a word being repeated low at first, then louder, which. You feel the air shift. Not the wind, but the mood. Tense, electric, like the village is holding its breath, waiting to exhale flames. It doesn't take much to start this kind of fire. A sick cow, a spoiled stew, a dream that didn't come true. Something bad happens. Someone wants an explanation, and what better explanation than magic? Witchcraft accusations aren't just about spells and black cats. They're about fear control and often boredom. In communities where the biggest event of the week is that goat that got stuck in a fence, a witch trial is practically theater. Horrifying, yes, but also entertainment. You edge back, suddenly less curious. Let's step aside from the fire pit of social panic for a moment and talk about how witchcraft was viewed in medieval Europe. Contrary to what Hollywood might tell you, not all of medieval society was obsessed with burning witches. In fact, widespread witch hunts didn't explode until the late 15th century and peaked in the 16th and 17th centuries, more early modern than true medieval. But the seeds were planted earlier, and they were watered by suspicion, misfortune, and local gossip networks that ran faster than any horse. Most accusations targeted women, often older, poorer, or living alone. Midwives, herbalists, or just that lady who doesn't come to church enough. You didn't need evidence. You just needed a few neighbors to say they saw you talking to a toad. Trials varied. Some involved long interrogations, Others relied on tests, like the infamous swimming trial, where being innocent meant drowning and surviving meant guilt. It's basically a lose-lose scenario medieval style. Tonight's quirky fact. In some areas, bread and cheese were used as lie detectors. The accused would be given a chunk of each and told to swallow while reciting a holy oath. If they choked, they were guilty. If they didn't choke well, maybe they had dry mouth. Either way, you're eating anxiety on toast. Back in your village, things don't escalate yet. The priest steps in, voice calm but heavy. He reminds the crowd of mercy, of patience. Maybe this isn't the day for a trial. Maybe it's just the day for more rumors. The accused woman walks away, but she doesn't walk lighter. Eyes follow her. Whispers trail behind her like smoke. You know this isn't over. It's just postponed. You return to your home, mind buzzing. You start seeing signs everywhere. A chicken that refuses to lay eggs. A neighbor who suddenly has a limp. Someone sneezing 4 times in a row. It's all suspicious if you're looking hard enough. And that's the danger, isn't it? Once the idea takes hold, everything confirms it. Human brains love patterns, especially when they involve drama. Now here's a question for your sleepy scholar mind. Were medieval witch trials more about justice, religion, or social control? Historians debate this endlessly. Some say it was about reinforcing church authority. Others believe it was the pressure valve for communities under stress. Or maybe it was just the medieval version of pointing fingers when life didn't go your way. Either way, you learned something tonight. Being quiet, obedient, and uninteresting might be the best form of protection. You spend the evening mending clothes by firelight. The shirt you wore to the woods has a tear. You use bone needles and thread made from animal sinew. Your fingers ache, your shoulders sag, but the rhythm is comforting. Stitch, pull, knot, repeat. Dinner is thin stew again, mostly cabbage and memory. A scrap of meat floats like a reward, and everyone fights politely with eyes to decide who deserves it most. After dinner, you listen as someone tells a story. Not from a book, books are too rare, too sacred, but from memory. It's about a knight, or maybe a monster, or maybe a knight who turns into a monster. The lines blur. That's the point. Storytelling is how your people remember. History lessons, jokes. It's oral Netflix with no rewind button. If you miss a part, too bad, you'll hear it again next winter. You notice something in the firelight. The same woman from earlier, the one accused, sits alone at the edge of the room. No one speaks to her. Her bowl is the last to be filled. You look away. You're not brave tonight. You lie down again on your familiar bed of straw. The goats snort. The air smells like onions, feet, and faint dread. You close your eyes. Sleep doesn't come quickly. Not because you're not tired, you are, but because your thoughts spin. About truth, fear, and how easily people change. How quickly a neighbor becomes a threat. And how lucky you were that no one noticed you talking to that weird toad yesterday. Morning greets you not with sunlight, but with shouting, again. This time, though, it's cheerful, or at least louder than usual, without the edge of accusation. Today is market day, a grand affair by medieval standards, which is to say the village square is filled with people, smells livestock noise, and a shocking number of elbows in your ribs. You make your way there, dodging carts, chickens, and a boy carrying fish, who is far too enthusiastic about swinging his basket around. The market isn't a permanent structure. It's more like a controlled explosion of blankets on the ground, makeshift stalls, and loud haggling over items you didn't know people needed. You pass dried herbs, live rabbits, cured meat that looks questionably cured rough-spun fabric, and a woman selling wooden spoons with suspiciously different lengths. Someone offers you a jug of wine that smells like vinegar and regret. You politely decline. In a world with no malls, no Amazon, and definitely no free shipping, the market is the heart of commerce. It's also the social center. People trade stories as much as they trade goods. Gossip flies faster than currency. You learn 3 births, 2 deaths, and a scandal involving a duck before you even see the cheese cart. There is cheese, by the way. Hard, salty, possibly older than you. You long for something soft, creamy, maybe even slightly chilled. But such things belong to nobility or fantasy. Here you trade a handful of eggs for a wedge of something that could double as a building material. A child cries nearby someone stepped on his toe. A merchant laughs too hard at his own joke. A goat escapes and sends three adults into a chaotic chase that ends in a pile of wool and confusion. You sidestep it all, careful not to look too available. Helping others catch animals is like offering to wash everyone's laundry for fun. Never volunteer. Now here's a curious detail. Medieval markets didn't just sell food or clothing. There were also entertainers, jugglers, musicians, even puppet shows. You stop to watch a man balance a wooden rod on his nose while playing a drum with his foot. He's surprisingly good. A few coins land in his hat, which is patched but proud. Markets also had their own legal system. Sometimes there'd be a market court to resolve disputes on the spot. Did someone claim you shortchanged them on turnips? Step aside and plead your case? It's like Judge Judy, but with fewer wigs and more chickens. Speaking of law, let's pause for tonight's peculiar fact. In some medieval towns, there were weighing stones where merchants had to prove their goods were the proper weight. Cheating the scales could lead to public shame, being tied to a post with a fish in your mouth, or worse, losing your market privileges. And if you think that sounds silly, remember that we still shame people online for bad reviews. The methods change, the drama remains. Back to you after some bartering, where you pretend not to care, then act shocked, then settle on a number. Everyone already knew you acquire half a loaf of bread, a turnip, and a candle stub. Success. You take a moment to sit on a wooden bench, chewing your bread slowly. It's dry but not terrible. You savor the moment, watching the swirl of people around you. There's music now, a flute being played somewhere. Children chasing one another through legs and baskets. There's something comforting about this chaos. It's the closest thing to joy your week offers. Life is still hard, sure, but here under the wide sky, surrounded by muddy boots and mismatched buttons, you feel part of something. Then a shout breaks the moment. Someone's been caught trying to steal. A boy, maybe 10, is dragged forward by his arm. The merchant is yelling. The boy is crying. People gather. What happens next depends on the village. Some places go hard, stocks, lashes, a public scolding that lasts an hour. Others are softer, maybe a warning, maybe the priest steps in. But always there's an audience. Justice is performative here. You watch hard, uneasy. The boy is scared, dirty, and small. The merchant is red-faced and loud. Eventually, someone tosses a coin at the man's feet and tells him to let it go. He grumbles but releases the child, who runs like wind. No one cheers, but no one stops him either. And here comes our academic ponderable: was medieval justice more about actual law or maintaining public order? Historians argue over whether punishments were meant to correct behavior or just remind everyone who held power. After all, when most crimes happen out of desperation, is punishment justice or just survival theater? You head home with your modest haul, the sounds of the market fading behind you. Your feet ache, your back protests, but you've survived the most social day of the week. The sun is dipping now, casting gold light over rooftops. You spot the runaway goat from earlier, casually chewing on someone's laundry. Its work here is done. At-home dinner is better than usual. A thicker stew thanks to market ingredients. Someone managed to scrounge salt, which means flavor. You eat in quiet satisfaction, letting the warmth settle into your bones. Later you hear someone singing, not for performance, just a soft tune while folding cloth. You hum along without realizing it. Your straw bed waits. It's no softer than yesterday, but tonight you don't mind as much. Your last thought before sleep is simple, unremarkable. Today was almost nice. And that might be the most medieval thing of all.